Okay, did you get the pop-up?
Yeah, that was easy.
Yeah, it's actually super duper easy.
Good.
Okay, so don't close out your Zoom because if you do, then we have to do the linkage again. It's not the end of the world, but
Yeah, I have one question. So I'm in a hotel because I'm stuck here, but I have to check out of this hotel like at 1 my time, which is like 12 your time.
oh, okay.
So if I make like a student the host and I leave, it should be okay, right?
Should be. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Hopefully. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good luck. I will make you host again
Great.
and move on to the others. Good luck. I'll pop in and out throughout the morning.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you for everything. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Hey, John.
Sorry, getting my shit together. Sorry, YouTube. Sorry,
You're
TV
gonna get us
land.
blocked on YouTube. Just kidding.
No kidding.
Okay.
My things.
Hey,
Elena.
everyone. Hey. Nice to see you, Omar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm stuck over here, but it's all good.
yeah.
Where are
But
you stuck, by the way?
you're jumping, right?
No, I'm gonna stay here. We're gonna stay in the room the whole time.
Oh, so it's a different format. It's not anymore that crazy jumping.
yeah,
back
it's
and
slightly
forth.
different. But I think it's worth explaining to John and Todd, like all the students today are not in my section, so you'll see like a mix.
Oh, funny.
It's kind of a mixed bag. I'm just in charge of the room. But any questions you have about the studio, I can answer. And yeah. Oh yeah, John, I'm stuck in Charlottesville. I was here for reviews, and then apparently there's a crazy storm coming in New Orleans or something.
Oh, yeah. Oh, funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for that reason, I will say, like, Kaylee, if it's okay with you, after you present, I'm gonna make you the host. You just have to, you can't leave the room, unfortunately. But I'm in a hotel and, like, the internet's not great. So if I drop, like, the whole room closes. So I just don't want that to happen. So unless maybe Arena, I can make you the host. Is that okay with you? I don't know.
That's
I
fine.
don't want to put pressure on.
Why don't you make somebody a co-host also?
Naomi just told me I actually have to, like, make someone the host, because if you're the co-host, let's say, and I leave, the room still closes.
No, it's fine. Make me the host. Yeah, fine.
Okay, I'm gonna do that now. Okay. Okay. Great. I think everyone's here. So if y'all don't know each other, John McMurrow from University of Michigan, Arena Kyle is here. Todd, I don't think we know each other, so maybe you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. My name's Todd Erlinson. I'm an architect in Santa Monica, California, in Los Angeles.
Great.
I studied at Tulane and taught at Tulane a few years back. I know Arena and have not met John, but I have my own firm called March Studio, and we focus on brand-related design and architecture.
Fantastic.
And I'm teaching at Woodbury University, which is out here in Burbank.
Great. So
Right
you'll
now.
be our resident LA expert.
Yes.
John, did you spend time in LA? I don't remember. So. I know Arena did.
I'll also say I went to SciArc, so I know that building and I know the area.
Yeah.
I was just down there last week.
I know the area. I've been to SciArc a number of times.
And right now, of course, you know LA. Okay, so Kaylee, do you want to start us off?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Okay, can you guys see full screen? Just to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So hi, I'm Kaylee, and the proposed project I'll be presenting today is the Community Corner. Zooming out to the master plan, the design started with an analysis of Greater Los Angeles, where the existing site is highlighted in black. Analyzing the grid of Los Angeles led us to the observation that there is a distinct discontinuity that begins with our site. The city is on a bias while our site holds a contrasting angle. Even further, when you extend the grid to the existing site, it does not match up. But through some thoughtful reworking, we pushed to make the grid of Greater Los Angeles flow into our site, and we did so by establishing our own grid that is the framework for the design. We focused on the reintegration of two main streets, East Aliso Street and East Temple Street, and used these as the two most public modes of transportation through the site, and from here created pedestrian subconnections between these main streets that address other important intersections on site, like the continuation of Santa Fe. The two main greenways on site respond to the green mall typology that is established by the nearby Grand Park. We also propose a dechannelization of the river where we add green to the river's perimeter to create a public space for the river that is otherwise not utilized. The final master plan combined the guiding rules of the grid, major streets, and green malls to develop the final plan, with housing and mixed-use developments creating greater density on the through streets and becoming less dense on the interiors of the buildings. The selected site for the proposal is on the corner of First Street and Alameda Street and is adjacent to the nearby museums of the Japanese American National Museum and the Museum of Contemporary Art. Along the bisecting boulevard of East Aliso Street, we developed bioswales to collect rain and gray water from the surrounding buildings that will be channeled into the LA River. And the main street types that will that can be expressed through these drawings are the mall and how it has space for many people to use. It also takes form of additional plazas on the wings. The main street with the bioswales again emphasizes the use of car street and pedestrian as well as biking. And the pedestrian street can be filled with gardens and trees to create an enriching experience for people to walk through. And the pedestrian street is also adjacent to the selected site. Here are those street types keyed into the master plan. And the program for the proposed catalyst is a Center for Design and Advocacy for Unhoused People. It is understood in this proposal that architecture cannot solve systemic issues alone, and therefore policy change and assistive action on the individual level is emphasized in the proposal. The long-term community-based housing, that is one of the housing types, is located on the least public parts of the site and is geared towards populations interested in access to a combination of quality green spaces and a close-knit community that can act as an anchor. The short-term supportive housing borders the main boulevard of East Aliso Street, which allows for shorter commute times and immediate access to amenities. This housing is geared towards tenants going through transitional moments in life that are still needing to plant roots in their routines. As previously mentioned, the selected site straddles Alameda Street, First Street, the pedestrian road, and the Green Mall, which allowed for an immediate and sometimes rigorous set of constraints. And when embarking on the design process for the site, the typology that seemed most evident was the L shape, as it allowed for the opportunity to address all of the major intersections of the site without giving preference or priority to one. From here, the L shape was split on the ground floor as it felt important to address and create a threshold through the existing site and the urban fabric of the two museums. The two volumes are connected by a breezeway on the second floor and ultimately become bridged by an interstitial volume on the third floor. The plaza was developed by mapping lower and higher density concrete to develop main pathways that receive visitors from the adjacent museums and street. Small covered pavilions were also developed to receive those waiting for the bus stop and to allow for gathering on the plaza that is shaded from the sun. Here's the culmination of those decisions in the site plan. And from here, circulation can be greater articulated by first establishing two main vertical cores. From there, a public spiral staircase is developed to allow access to the breezeway and roof without actually having to enter into the building. And then an inhabited stair is implemented to receive and invite the public into the actual physical building. And it also transitions and continues into a space for a auditorium. And the left volume is, and then on the top, all three of these circulation routes are bridged, and you can also see the continuation of the spiral staircase and one elevator onto the roof where there is access to view the Green Mall. The left volume is considered to be more public and advocacy geared as it houses the library cafe, and while the right volume houses a counseling center. From here on the second floor, the library turns into a gallery and multi-purpose auditorium, and atop the counseling center is a community computer lab space. On the third floor is again that studio and maker space, and this is imagined to function in similar ways to the Albert and Tina Small Center at Tulane. The ground floor plan showcases the counseling center and library. Moments of note are the central atrium space in the private volume and the cafe window that opens up and serves patrons in a walk-up style that is compatible with the plethora of plaza space to rest and eat. The second floor houses the gallery and auditorium, which slowly step up as you progress through the space. The breezeway serves as exterior circulation, as well as an opportunity to proceed up to the third floor. And the third floor transitions from a makerspace at the lower right to conference rooms and then into a studio and workspace, finishing as a presentation space and lounge area for employees. There's also an interior covered courtyard that allows for occupants to look out onto the breezeway below. And here's the roof plan that highlights that inhabitable portion adjacent to the Green Mall with the elevator and stair access. The facade functions as a double-layered system of perforated bricks and fins that densify and decompress in accordance with the program and the directionality of the facade. The fins vary between 3, 6, and 9 inches in depth. The site section cuts through the Museum of Contemporary Art and Alameda Street and highlights the atrium space that within the building that allows light back into the center of the space. Here is a zoom in of that section that articulates the facade in a little greater detail. The second section cuts perpendicular to the last and highlights the role of the spiral staircase and layering of interior and exterior space throughout the project. The section perspective highlights the double height special condition that the inhabited stair and auditorium are created for the below library, and also emphasizes the role of the public spiral staircase in exterior circulation. This is a series of experimental views highlighting the relationship between volumes and adjacent housing spaces. And this one always takes a minute to load. The isometric highlights the inhabitable portion of the roof, as well as the important role of the roof serves in uniting the 3 continuous volumes. And the oxidized steel was selected as a materiality for the fins, with stone being selected for the bricks. Here's a view of that atrium space, a view of the breezeway, that plaza, and the layering of space from the mall into the building and then through to the plaza. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe I just start. Thanks very much for your presentation. It's for me that even when it's an architectural proposal at the end, the emphasis, I think, of that studio is the community, the master plan. So it means the city, the urban environment. And I was waiting and waiting for you to relate, even in the architectural scale, to what is opposite, like what's opposite these buildings. On one side, there's really a wide corridor, so it's very difficult to create a connection to something opposite. So if this is a catalyst, and if this is an urban building that communicates with the surroundings, with something that's found in the context, I was missing that a little bit. in your explanation. It was very centered onto the L-shaped building themselves. But then already when it gets to the plaza next to it or to what's opposite, you didn't touch on this anymore. So just as an advice, I think I would always integrate, even when I present the architecture and the building, what is next to it, what's opposite, what's adjacent, because I try to establish a connection, because you cannot rely on only people that visit that building alone to create activity and to create interaction. So I think that's a big lesson to learn when you do urban design or master planning. It's not just my building or this building. You always have to communicate with what's around and try to integrate very diverse populations and functions around it.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree. I also agree with those points. But first, want to say it's a beautiful building and very well presented and like, very convincing. My question about its efficacy has to do with not the urban plan, but its place in the urban plan, or like the way you emphasize it. You tend to show us what I think is rendered as the back of the building, although you might think of it as the front. The other side, you have this sort of eroded corner that faces into a mall. I love the building. I'm just not sure I love it there in a way, because it seems, I guess I don't understand the site well enough. It seems like it's a great opportunity for a kind of gateway building where people would be moving through that aperture from this plaza into another thing. I think that might be its great potential. It seems to sit small on the site for that. Like I really love the thing. I just wish it had, I don't know, more neighbors so that the opening up of that corner could be a more powerful gesture. Because I think it's beautiful in the form, but in its place in the city, it gets diffused because there's so many ways to walk around it because of the scale. But if it was part of like a perimeter block that you had to move through that corner to get into a courtyard, I just think it would be much more charged. That said, I thought the development of the skin, and this might be more a function of that elevation you showed us. When you first showed us, like, oh wow, that's like an 80-story building. Like you're doing something funny with the scale because you have the fins and then you also have the sort of checkerboard. Was that part of your thinking about the development of the facade, that it would somehow render the scale ambiguous or bigger than it is, or was that a game you were playing? Kaylee?
Yeah, that was kind of an accident. I started to notice that in the elevation as well. I think the perforated brick, it's just like, it can like read as like these really big volumes that like allow for massive windows, but in reality, those windows are a lot smaller.
Uh-huh. I just thought that was a great, like, but for me, that's also just has to do with my vision of the building as you describe it is like, it plays with its scale. So it's actually not a big building, but in some ways it renders itself as a huge building. But then its placement on the site is it's rendered small again in the vastness of the plaza. Whereas I think if it had like neighbors, it could like fight above its weight more. Right now, it's a big building that becomes almost a pavilion because it's so much openness around it. Something about that eroded corner as an urban gesture for me implies a denser urban fabric.
That's a good point, John. But the three favorite things for me about the project I think are most successful are that corner, and then the movement from that corner up on the left-hand building, how you kind of have an outdoor amphitheater, and then that turns and you kind of end up on the second and third floor. I think that circulation is really interesting, and I find the skin really beautiful. I think especially in the shot that you said took a little while to load, the one that had the light behind it. But that said, I think you set yourself up with some good tools to address some of the things that maybe John and Orin are talking about. It really isn't for example, on the corner, both those, when I look at your render, both the road and the park are completely different things, right? But you're kind of treating the facade the same way on both. So one facade is on a major kind of boulevard, we call them in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is built on the boulevard. Buses and people and movement are happening along those roads. But then on the other side, it's basically a park, right? So how would the facade kind of change based on that, and how would it be different? It seems like it could be more permeable. And then to me on the back side, the same thing. The whole back of the building, the facade wouldn't come around, but you'd have kind of a different strategy for the facade, or maybe it would open up more, right? So that's in plan, but in elevation as well. You know, on the front building here, the one right in the middle, your corner that's so interesting about how you can kind of inhabit it without actually going into the building. You don't see any opportunities for seeing into that or maybe seeing out. So kind of breaking all the way through. I think the idea of breaking the rules that you've set up for yourself to highlight certain aspects of the building would be great. Maybe there's a big hole in the corner on the side that overlooks a park, or you know, maybe the back works differently. And you know, also with all these grids, you know, everything's very rectilinear. I was kind of waiting for you to do something to break that rectilinearity, right? Is there a place where you might refer back to the grid across the other boulevard towards the museums or something like that? Is there a way that those other grids could kind of seep in a little bit and break the rule that you've set up for yourself? Does that make sense?
For sure.
Yeah, it's actually an object, but you treat it like a block building. I agree with John that it somehow is set up as if it would be part of a block, and it doesn't break the grid. But if it really truly is an object building, I can do anything. I can just, and it's on the edge of this whole development. So yeah, you would expect that. Why follow the grid there? Why place it as if it would be part of a block, a perimeter block? So I think that's, for me, the biggest confusion or missed opportunity, that you don't break out of this master plan and of this shell, of this rigor, because it's really not relevant anymore at that point.
Those two buildings across the street are pretty,
No, please.
yeah, they're just important. There was a good opportunity there between the Japanese museum and the Museum of Contemporary Art that Frank Gehry designed. You're looking at the back of those buildings, but there is an opportunity to kind of make a reference to them or make a connection, or, you know, it's kind of a special corner really of the whole site that you guys are working on.
I mean, I really am a fan of the building, Kaylee, and I think the resolution of that corner is great in that there's an eroded corner at the base. On the backside, you have this cantilever. On top of the cantilever, there's actually a suspended courtyard. I think that's, for me, the most exciting part of it. I mean, I agree with my earlier comments, I guess, that it's a morphological issue of like where that typology sits in this plan. But I think the tensions around that corner are really fantastic, and that's also what I really appreciate about the project. One thing that I'm just more curious, I don't know if it's a mistake or not, it seems like the base level, I can see some moments there aperture, but from what I understand, the program and the outreach, it seems like more of that would be open to either the plaza or the mall, like there'd be more porosity on the base level. You treat it as a kind of, you know, in a very tasteful way, you treat it as a base condition, which makes sense. But to me, it seems like, oh, programmatically, maybe the challenge there would be to have it read as a base, but actually be very porous at the level of being able to walk in and out of it. Like, because it seems like you're making all these gestures to like moving out and through. And so there might be ways in which the cafe spills out and takes advantage of that overhang, or just different ways that would be those apertures. It would give it a new challenge. I think you have a very articulate rationale for the orange parts with the striping and the brick, and maybe the bottom part has another whole logic. I think when you see in your renderings on the upper level of how the suspended plaza works, or the sort of overhang, I think that's more the porosity I'd also expect on the ground level in a way, because that would be where the public could interface it easier.
Yeah, I think these are, that's probably a good place to leave it. What do you think, Kaylee?
Yeah, I really appreciate all the feedback.
Yeah. I mean, I think y'all really hit on the things we've been struggling with all semester, I'd say. Like really trying to understand the vastness of that corner condition. And there are a few other projects. I'm not sure if we'll see them today. I think we'll see at least one or two, but a few other projects that kind of take on the corner that particular corner, but with different master plans. So we'll see how that resolves. But for me, I think it's a very sophisticated project. And I think it shows a lot of sophistication, not only like material and formal and morphological, but also like taking on civic-minded program, which we discussed. That's like half the battle when you're trying to have a catalyst building. Like the building itself can do a lot, but you know, having good program also helps to catalyze. And I love the connection to the neighboring buildings. But thanks very much, Kaylee. It's been a great semester. It's a beautiful set of drawings here.
Thank you.
I
Appreciate it.
wonder if Kaylee's seen the California Endowment Building by Rios Associates, which is in Chinatown, just a couple blocks away. But it's there might be something to learn there.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that one.
Thanks, Todd. If you could send the link for that, that'd be great. All right, Brendan, how you feeling?
Pretty ready. Let's find out. All right, I'm gonna share that full screen. All right, you guys can see okay? Can you hear me okay? Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, good morning. My name is Brendan Cook, and welcome to my project, Elevated Commons, which sits on the Activated Funnel Master Plan. We'll start with an overview of the site before diving into an exploration of the design through diagrams, plans, sections, section perspective, perspectives, axonometric, isometric, and model. As we analyzed the site, my partner and I found 3 key details to inform our plan. The lack of green space in the downtown area, highlighted here, the abundance of cultural districts all converging on the site, and the surrounding buildings rapidly rising in height. We laid down a central green space in the shape of a funnel, with parks both over and within the river basin, and placed a street grid that would strike a balance between convenience for cars and protection of that green space, while also connecting to the surrounding street grid. To address the surrounding buildings, ours grew in height exponentially towards the downtown, creating a gradient of suburban to urban. Buildings adjacent to the funnel became restaurants on the ground floor, and we populated the funnel with gathering spaces. This allowed for the site to become that cultural melting pot. My urban catalyst is placed in the center of the 93-acre site, creating one last tight squeeze for pedestrians before the funnel splays into the open green space. The program in the funnel consists of the urban catalyst, pavilion, patio, and entry paths, which all build in height opposite to the gradient of the rest of the site. This can be seen roughly in the site section, but far more clearly in the sectional diagram. Before diving too far into diagrams, here's a quick peek at the finished volume to help you visualize. We first lay down a 24 by 40 foot steel structural bay. We then add 3 volumes that pierce and are in turn unified by this first volume. Since the unifying volume is elevated, it gets its own structure with a truss along the exterior to support the long spans between dedicated columns and the piercing volumes to provide additional lateral stability. These lines are fairly distracting, so we'll hide them for now. To bring light into the space, our unifying volume gets windows all around, as does our middle piercing volume. Our outer piercing volumes get light through the east and west walls. Our cores go along the south walls, the stairs and elevators that extend into the underground parking beneath the funnel. A circulation corridor is maintained along these through the piercing volumes and around the piercing volumes in the unifying volume. With the help of a few lines, we can see the intermediate plan. The pavilion to the west provides a moment of calm with shade and water, and the amphitheater to the east uses the slope of the land bridges to provide a performance and gathering space. The patio in the middle, under the unifying volume, is dotted with artificial boulders to break up the space, as well as seating away from the bright sun. With this, we can begin to explore the program. We begin on the ground floor with a specific program, a childcare center. This enables far more accessibility to the space, as parents can utilize the library and attend events in the multipurpose room, knowing their children are safe and nearby. This floor features our lobby and cafe, the children's library and the children's library in the first volume. Voids carved in the shelves provide moments of discovery for beanbag seating and classroom space. The second volume contains an art space for the children with pottery wheels, easels, desks, counters, and enough storage to hold anything the kids would want to create with, while also maintaining the motif of opaque north and south walls. The third volume is a playroom, complete with rock climbing wall, trampolines, foam pit, and lots of padded surfaces, because any parent can confirm that all they truly want is for their kids to be tired when they pick them up at the end of the day. The second floor is our unifying volume, containing the library. Between the piercing volumes are the bookshelves. Ample space for lounging, studying, working, meeting, and making exists in the bright and open outer edge. The main spiral stair opens into the makerspace on the east end, and a walk down the ever-expanding corridor terminates in a lounge that overviews the display of the funnel. The third floor continues the piercing volumes with a multi-purpose room, which is large enough to contain multiple purposes at once. Shown here is a banquet served by a bar space and an auditorium seating set up in front of a removable stage. Outdoor courtyards nestled in the sloping green roof provide a transition into the triple height exhibition space while making use of the often fantastic LA weather. The exhibition space itself is triple height volume and accepts lights from all four sides. The final volume is the back of house administration and office space. Extra large to support the additional workers for the child care center, the space also contains a fishbowl conference room and space for professional artists to create works of any size and shape. These come together and are isometric, where you can see the way the light filters in through the truss and the true magnitude of expansion as the visitor travels through the library. The artificial boulders bring color to the exterior and echo the beanbags while providing objects for children to play on and around. We can also see these spaces in section. This first one cuts through our third volume and allows a better look at the rock climbing wall and nurse's office in the corner, which children can always be trusted to make use of no matter how much padding is present. The second section cuts through our triple height art space, where visitors can enjoy a variety of art spaces and peek down at the true masterpieces their children are making below. We also get a better view of our primary stair in the final section, as well as the extension of the fire stairs into the core to the parking garage below. The intermediate section allows us to see all these spaces at once, working together to create a whole continuous experience. Adding a splash of color and texture brings us to the section perspective, showing nearly every room and piece of furniture in the building. It also provides an excellent launch pad for our perspectives. First, our triple art space with windows allowing for light and views into the library. Next, the lobby space with the unifying spiral staircase and waiting room as children finish whatever book, art, or backflip they're working on. Third, a view down the library corridor, showing the flexibility for activity and the variety of seating. Finally, the building, amphitheater, and surrounding gradient of building height and LA skyline as seen from the land bridge. Last and certainly not least is the model. Pictured here, fully assembled with a 12-inch ruler for scale, and built at 3/64 of an inch equals a foot. The model was made to come apart. The walls are made of hand-cut 4-ply museum board, and the furniture is 3D printed from white plastic. Is that everything I have to say? So I'll just leave you with these final photos.
Amazing descriptions, I have to say.
Thank you.
Mhm. Well, I have to compliment you on I think the programming is very convincing and believable and exciting. The mix of functions and I love to see a library, large library, an urban library. It's great. When you showed your renderings at the end, and I followed you and kind of nodded everything. Yes, 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 makes total sense. But then when I see the renderings and how dark it is where the kids are, then I thought, I don't know, should there be maybe something flipped? Should the kids program rather be on the roof and the other program on the bottom, the library in the middle? I love that. But but then LA has so much sun, so I don't know if that's actually a good thing that it's so shaded down there. It seems a bit dark in that area where the kids are. So, and the second thing that I wasn't really so sure about is the funnel idea might be a good one in the master plan, but then when it comes to the building and you look at this isolated building, when you're not a bird flying over it, so you don't see these geometric games. And then suddenly that angle and this really restriction of the circulation to this very narrow moment, and the pointing at something which is so far away doesn't make sense anymore. So I don't know if the building needs that game or that kind of angled. It could be fine just as a rectangle. I don't know if it needs that. It doesn't add much for me to the building. It actually creates kind of problems, or not problems, but awkward moments when it all narrows down to, I don't know how much it is, 10 feet or 6 feet, where it's the narrowest. There, yeah.
Narrowest is about 5
Yeah,
feet.
here.
That was as small as I could get it. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems, I don't, why do you do that? You have so much space. So
Yeah,
sometimes you don't have to follow all the time, or something follows it, but not the whole building, right?
that's fair. I was trying to kind of echo the display of the funnel. And then the reason it gets so tight there is that even with that being so tight, I'm already 10,000 square feet over the square footage. So I was really trying to minimize that as much as possible, as well as kind of create that moment of tight squeeze and expansion. But, that's very fair. That's very fair.
Yeah, I don't know, Tulane. So far, you're 2 for 2 for well thought out, executed, considered nice buildings. So, like another impressive one. I think so. Like, I mean that very sincerely. Like, really well thought out, beautiful renderings. The presentation was like over the top good. We got descriptions of the model material, which is a new one for me. So, really super commendable. And I like the scheme. Like, I think this one morphologically makes a lot of sense. And it does a really interesting thing in your plan. I like displays, but I understand the square footage issues. In that what it does though is it like takes this thing that's like a mall going into a bigger park. You put an object in it, the object is then rendered as a kind of pavilion, even though it's a very big one, or it sort of, I would say, oscillates. Like, is it the biggest pavilion we've ever seen, or is it a building with very big setbacks? And I think it's sort of both of those in a way. And I think for me, I'm interested in both readings. The part that I don't understand, and it leads into my question or qualification, is I don't understand the circulation of the building. And so this is the part that's actually a question when I finish my ramble. Like, I don't quite understand how you get into the building, and I don't quite understand how you get up and through the building. It seems to me, to make it into a comment before the question, it seems like those flayed edges, like there's just an opportunity for its entry to be very in the round, like entering from both sides of the building, entering from its ends. I think the way that the park is treated, for me, seems like it ignores the fact that it's no longer just a open park, but it's a different thing. It has building frontage on both sides. And so I feel like there'd be many more paths through it. There'd be many more things that occupy both the north and the south in a way, and you'd be able to enter it in many other ways. That said, that's my take on it. I'm just curious, like, how do you enter the building? How do you move up through it? What is the
so the main here on the first floor plan, the main kind of entry is here on the west side. We tried a lot of different kind of ways to enter the building, a lot of different stair schemes here, but we kind of settled on this kind of 3-door approach, where there's one kind of on the bottom here that lets through the linear path through the 3 volumes. And this one is more kind of a direct entrance into the kind of lounge and waiting room, if you kind of know what you're doing. And then one centered on this circulation desk and stair. But yeah, I think the circulation is.
You've got me in now.
Yes, sorry. Up is the spiral stair here, and then there's fire stairs here and here. Circulation was definitely a challenge with this because of kind of the way that these are all double height volumes and this triple height volume. It was hard to get a consistent through point there, but we kind of tried to capture that with the stair opening in the middle and kind of creating these, you have tight squeezes you round the corner and open up. But it is one of those things that wasn't fully resolved.
No, fair enough. I mean, I guess my 2 cents is that you develop it as a linear building, and I think it's actually a wide building.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
Which is just a different take on how that circulation might happen in the site. I mean, I still think it's great, but I think there could be huge stairs that just plow their way through those open spaces, or more doors on the sides that would change its character.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add on to that, the idea of a pavilion on the ground floor, and also to comment on something that Irina brought up. In preschools, schools have a lot of security, right?
True.
So it's difficult to make that first level as permeable as you might want it, right? This thing really sits in the middle of a park. So to enter, it does feel a little awkward to enter on one end, even though it's on the axis. You feel like you would be able to enter these 3 pavilions from all sides. And then what kind of amenities can they provide for people who are out and about, having lunch, sitting, playing in the park. How can that serve the ground level things that are happening around it beyond the limits of the wedge, and maybe moving the children up to the roof, like the Marseille block, Corb's Marseille block, where the preschool's on the roof is kind of the way to go to free that up. I was kind of struck by the rigor of the building. Like it feels like, I don't know if you know an LA architect named Gregory Ain, AIN. I think he designed the Art Center School in Pasadena, where it's kind of like a big truss. It's a big bridge, and it's very rigorous.
Okay, yeah.
And it feels a little like that, and it felt a little bit constricting to me. But when I saw your sections, can you show me that color section again? Maybe go back one. Maybe it wasn't color. It was a short section.
One of these.
Yeah, one more. Not that one. The other one. Yeah, that one. That was really great. No, go back to that one. The one before. Yeah, where this open space can be seen by the side spaces of a library, but then the third floor looks into the library. I thought that was getting really rich there, and maybe some long ramps or something that could move the circulation from front to back in a long way, right, where you could experience that over the length of the site would be pretty cool. So maybe there's a way with using that really long building to get you from one end to the other, but through movement would be pretty cool, and then would also let you experience the kind of interest in section at the same time.
Fair point.
Yeah, I think it's really, the sections are very exciting. And I could also imagine that there's maybe stairs that go from the library level directly into the park, so that the library, because it's public, or the most, well, I don't know if it's the most public, but let's just say, could circumvent all the other program and just go directly out into the public. So more fun, it's still rigorous, but have a little bit of fun with the, building itself. But I mean, I know it's a very, very short design phase in that urban studio for the actual building. So I'm very impressed about how far you all got so far, what I've seen. Right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Just so this section is a very good example, like the way the ground floor, because of the overhang, to my argument, that renders those sides as like a portico without the columns. And so that's why I kind of feel like it should get developed. And I still think in this section, you love your cubic 3-story volumes. I want you to ram a stair through it and like let the circulation come in and do another kind of work to like mess with your clarity. And it would just create interest and overlap of program and but yeah, no, super impressive. Like yeah.
Thanks, Brendan.
Omar, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
If Omar wasn't so kind, he'd be staring daggers at me right now. A stare into the library from the open space was something he suggested pretty early on.
Hey, it's okay. You took a lot of stuff too, so it's all good. And you didn't have to. Can you go to the model photos really quick? This is for Irena, because Irena just asked me. Are your students making models? This is a really nice model. Like this is a really nice model. And here at Tulane, like, I mean, the culture of model making, hopefully we're starting to bring it back. Kaylee did some renders that looked like models, but this is the real deal. Sorry, Kaylee. It's really nice. And Brendan, you're just such a joy to work with. It's been a good semester. And y'all all saw his personality. I mean, he's larger than life, always brings a lot of energy, and it's really fun, and but works really, really hard. He changed his whole project. I don't know how long ago that was, Brendan, but still.
Yeah, I changed it 2 weeks in.
Mid-review. At the mid-review.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, but then got really excited about this, and I think.
Oh yeah.
So thank you very much, and thanks for all the great comments. I think it was super helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see who's next here. Benny Bailey. Benny, you ready?
Yes, I am. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Hello, my name is Ben Bailey, and I'm very excited to share with you Cascading Through Los Angeles, a project that aims to not only meet the needs of downtown LA, but more importantly, establish a relationship with and engage the LA River. I'd like to start by sharing a little bit about my master plan. My partner and I began by closely examining the existing site, which is a plot of land located in the heart of downtown LA's culture. We removed everything from the site except for the existing conditions that we were tasked to preserve. Shown here is our final master plan, which its main concept encompasses the creation of 4 urban catalysts, the buildings shown in red, each of which helps to revitalize the urban life throughout downtown LA, while also bringing a sensitivity to sustainability and ecology. The site was divided into 4 quarters, which is what define the spaces in which the urban catalyst would be located. They are connected by a mobility loop that touches each catalyst while also traveling over the river and back. Here is our site axon to help visualize the massing of the buildings in space, as well as the importance of revitalizing the river. Shown here was our proposed ground floor plan. The porousness of the building's footprints accentuates fluidity between buildings, creating a stronger connection from the east to west, allowing for a seamless connection to the river. From north to south, that porous language continues, making the connection from one end of the site to the other easier. Making the ground floor as porous as possible allows for semi-public, semi-private spaces for both retail and commercial. In my revised ground floor plan, I made the design decision to continue that porosity, accentuating a smoother transition between spaces. The horizontal orientation and plan focuses on access from east to west. In my revised master plan, I continued the language of linear buildings to the north and placed my building at the edge of the previously designed urban catalyst land to start creating a relationship with the river. The shape of my building was defined because of the pre-existing donut buildings that are in the center of the site. The red lines here show streetcar access throughout the site and how one may arrive to my building. Given the building's close proximity to the river, the theme of water becomes evident within my project. Ecologically centered around water treatment, this building serves as an aid to not only help the LA River, but respond to the issues of water retention that a vast majority of California faces. By collecting water from the surrounding area, filtering both gray and black water, and then redistributing it to the greater Los Angeles area, this project serves to become an example for water retention for the community. Although one of the focal points of the building's program is to serve as a library, my specialized program serves as a community center focused on health and wellness, becoming a place that students and people of all ages can utilize to improve their overall health. The main concept of the building is a series of rings within the floor plans. There are 2 main rings, each relating with the typology of the program. Shown in light gray is open program, which is designated to a noisier, more public space given it is located directly next to an open central courtyard. The darker gray serves as closed program, which sits on the exterior of the ring to promote a quieter, closed-off space. In between these rings is circulation, which is a buffer to help mitigate the transition between spaces. Although the rings are strict and drive the project's interior space, the circulation and open program rings have the opportunity to mesh. The width and spaces of these rings can be adjusted to accommodate for each level's specific program. The ground floor program is a prime example of this rule in order to allow circulation from the west end of the site to the river on the east. Breaking this rule allows for a much stronger connection to the water. In this figure ground diagram, similar to the movement of water, anyone who interacts with this building and the surrounding site is cascaded from west to east, creating a path filled with water-retentive gardens and bioswales. These interactive green spaces become a focal point in aiding the transition towards the river. This early concept model I built helped aid my idea of shifting aggregates in diagonal internal spaces centered around one primary courtyard open to the sky. The internal courtyard starts from the basement of the project and grows vertically to the top of the building. As you progress from level to level, the courtyard rotates 45 degrees, creating overlapping geometries that allow for covered internal balconies that are still open to the exterior. The basement of the project houses all of the mechanics of water treatment and filtration. There are storage tanks, a testing center to determine the level of purity within the water, and a research area to continue the search for making LA more water sustainable. The ground floor showcases the centralized courtyard, creating a moment of pause when passing through. On both the east and west ends of the ground floor, there are floor-to-ceiling glass boxes which puncture the ground below, allowing the building's filtration tanks to become one with the people on ground floor. The ground floor is the connective tissue for the surrounding community. It can serve as a hub and a middle ground when exploring this newly walkable area in downtown LA. The porousness of this floor allows people to get a glimpse into how the building strives to make a change for the betterment of the LA residents through water treatment. The second floor is dedicated to a library space, creating a glass enclosed ring that showcases uninterrupted views to the river, as well as the west and south ends of the site. The open program surrounding the courtyard allows circulation in private spaces to communicate with one another, resulting in a fluid transition between spaces. On the third floor, the health and wellness focused program is emphasized heavier, which features a yoga studio which creeps out onto the exterior balcony, private meditation rooms along the east facade, and a counseling center for students, and a cooking class, which is a place where people can learn about better nutrition. In section, we can read the openness of the ground floor while also seeing a cascading of spaces through the center of the project. The zigzag creates diagonal views in an inward-facing relationship. The shifting in volumes creates complexity within the center of the project while also creating room for exterior balconies. These balconies are not only occupiable spaces, but serve as outdoor water collection planters. Outside of the basement serving as the mechanics of water treatment, I wanted the architecture to represent water collection. The pitched roof sloping into the courtyard represents that this building is ready for rain and that the courtyard will act as a sponge. Here's a facade detail to show the exterior pergola that covers each balcony, as well as materiality. In Axon, we see the relation to the surrounding site. Heavily vegetating the areas with water-retentive plants and gardens expands mindfulness and tranquility from within the building to the exterior spaces. The facade wraps around the building completely. Its vertical fins block the sun. I chose not to extend the fins to the ground floor to promote transparency and develop the outdoor space further. This perspective shows the facade of the building when looking east towards the river. The exterior fins also vary in height and distribution, hiding intimate and showcasing public moments. On the ground floor, one is presented with a large elliptica tree, a tree that happens to be filled with water, symbolizing water retention within the building. On the ground floor, there are views to the basement, upper balconies, and the sky. Most importantly, it is a means for transportation towards the river, connecting the surrounding architecture. From the library, views to the river and the surrounding site are engaging and foster a positive learning environment. The incorporation of a double height space above students studying creates a spacious feel. And lastly, here is a view from the third floor balcony. One can not only see the sunny California skies, but also students hard at work studying below. Thank you.
Just
So
out
I
of
have a
curiosity.
question.
Oh.
Oh, no, go ahead, John.
No,
Then
it's
I
a
have a
minor question. Where are you at square footage wise? This seems smaller than the two we've seen before. Were the other two
Right.
really big and you're exactly right?
Yes.
Okay, that's my question.
He's stuck to the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
I have another question, also question. How much does it rain in LA? I mean, I don't know. It
So
has
yeah,
changed so much.
that's the
Did you
idea,
look
is
at
that
the rain amount, or how much water is
yeah,
there per year?
it's getting around, it'll rain 2 to 3 times a year. And so the whole idea is that because it doesn't rain a lot in this area of California, that this building kind of serves the metaphor that when it does, it's going to soak up everything, as well as it's going to filter all of the extra water in the surrounding area through the site.
Because
I think-
didn't you have some bioswales also
Mm.
on the side? Because what happens to those when it's dry most of the time? Like, what do they look like? I'm always curious about all of these water and bioswales. And then if there's no water, what happens there? I don't know.
I mean, I think we see that a lot in the West. When we get water, we get it a lot.
Mhm.
So we need to have places we want to store it, right? Every building needs to keep any water that falls within the perimeter of its site on site in some kind of retention basin, so that either it goes into the ground or it can be used as gray water, or because the storm water goes right out into the ocean. So we lose that water in our aquifer. So we're trying to kind of keep as much water as possible. And you see that in places like, also in places like Phoenix, Arizona, where they have parks and big wide areas that can be flooded at very seldom in the year, but the rest of the year they're used as open space, right? But when it does rain, when they get the monsoons, they have a place to kind of keep that water. So I think it's relevant. I think the idea that the idea of water and the presence of water is referred to, even though it doesn't, it may not rain for 6 or 8 months.
Mhm. So if it's so dramatic that these moments when it occurs, it's like an explosion of water. I mean, I see in your section that the roof is sloped towards the courtyard. So I guess there's the idea that directs the water. So this is one of the measures to direct water down to the collection part. But somehow, I mean, it's a very nice building, very like you play by the rules. Nothing's wrong. It's all well placed. But this drama of, or this problem of the collection of the water, the storing of the water, the kind of moments when it happens, and there are long stretches when it doesn't. I wish the building would be more about that and less about stretching my limbs and meditate. And also making this even more dramatic. I saw in your section, when I saw the plans, I thought, well, shouldn't that water collection, should that really be further up or more visible and not just be down in the basement? But then in the section I saw, okay, it goes up into the ground level and I can peek down. And I just thought it should be more present and more prominent, and almost like elbow its way out of its basement level and have more to do with the building.
I mean, super simply, this is starting to refer to it, and like, where do you catch it? What happens here, right? And places like this seem to be problems, like where rain is falling on the outside. We want to. This diagram to me kind of feels like a funnel, right? It feels like a funnel. You're catching everything and you're really careful about that. And then you're celebrating it when it gets into the building. So, how do you keep it from like flooding these and making these spaces uncomfortable even, right? So I think just kind of tightening up your diagram would be to celebrate that thing that you're talking about, right? Here it feels like you're making a swimming pool down here, but you would probably want some kind of, and then storage below that, right?
I mean, I also think this is, I think it's a beautifully developed building because it's not as big as the others. I think it has a kind of intimacy. Also, the way you've developed it, like looking at those floor plans, there's no, it's very much a kind of, not a big house, but it has a kind of domestic feeling in the way you've orchestrated the spaces. And I think it's all really super well done. This isn't a review comment or even a critique, more an amusement. I was on these reviews last year, and I always find it so funny that you show these urban development plans, and the first thing you do is say, well, we planned this to be a linear thing, but I decided like the first move you make is to break your own rules, and you introduce the square here.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. Like, it's a really nice building. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm just curious, why did you like not develop it as a linear building, like given the plan? Like, I'm just curious. I think it's a little bit psychological, but I'm just curious, Ben, what your motivations were.
I think the idea that it would be linear solely on the ground floor to kind of guide the audience towards the river was the idea, and that as you kind of progress up the building, it becomes more of like this inward facing relationship. So I think that's probably the rationale as to why it becomes more square as you progress up.
No, I mean, I like the form of it, and I think it's a good solution. I think it's more interesting. Maybe it's the story of every urban master plan. It seems like a good idea until one isn't personally in charge and you want to make other decisions.
Yeah, I mean, you could have taken one of these guys and put him over here, like a miniature version. I kind of miss that, that you can walk across the site in both directions. Like you could have, you could have done both. I see that these are kind of in line with these, but maybe you could have mixed these two typologies, the ground floor and the second floor. And then you get to play when you said, oh, the screen is treated the same way on all four sides, and it blocks the sun. And we know the sun's not on all four sides. So how could you use that skin to kind of go back to your urban planning idea and kind of play with it a little bit or reference it, right?
I actually do not understand that master plan on the top right. So the one on the top left to me is more convincing. On the right, it's so cut up, the volumes. When I look at this was residential, where's my?
It's a ground floor plan. That's why it's cut up.
Yeah, I know, but there's so many little pieces. It's all small shops, I guess, right?
Correct.
So it has the residential scale from the east side. And so I don't understand why that is transported over to to that area of the city. So that's why the original master plan, or the one you show on the left, seems more convincing to me, because it has larger volumes and more of a kind of an urban scale than the one on the right. The one on the right is like a suburban one. But I mean, you didn't really have to go into detail about that master plan. So.
Okay, great. I think we have time for maybe one more comment if anyone has anything.
The facade is a little bit, it's the kind of fins and the vertical fins or mullions. It's like a to-go to device, which is quick, and you just draw it and it looks like something and you wrap it all around the building. So, but again, it was not a facade project, so it has lots of other layers. But since you have 4 sides to the building, you also could emphasize a linear language again by treating sides differently. You have different orientations to the sun, so there could be more variety, I think, in the more subtlety in the facade.
I think initially the facade design started with the vertical fins on the 2 sides, east and west, and then north and south the fins should be horizontal. But I wanted to continue that facade and almost wrap around the entire building to create one unified language instead of 2.
I mean, the density can change. You already play with the density a little bit of the fins, and so maybe that could be more pronounced depending on which side of the building you're on. And then not everything has to be glass behind it, right? Right now it looks like it's a full glass building, which in these times and days is really not necessarily what you want to do, to wrap a building in glass.
Okay, well, thanks, Benny. I for one really enjoyed that center perspective you have there. I like that nostalgic LA feel. It'd be nice, like, for the old portfolio, like do that for the other renderings. Yeah, I think you developed something really nice there. And I really like the building. It's a great project, and I love the master plan when y'all presented it at the midterm. So great work. Thanks, Benny.
Thank you.
Okay, Cole, are you here? Is Cole here?
Yes, I am.
Sorry, you were just off screen for me. All right.
Hello, and good morning. My name is Cole Schwabacher, and this is Stacked Spines. This is the table of contents. We'll be going from master plan, the site, diagram, plan section, and perspective axon. So this is the master plan. We decided to break it up by 3 different roads: boulevards in gray with heavy street traffic, then the brown spines that we'll get into more, and then the green veins. These are the spines in context of what I imagine the notches alongside them. So this is being cut out of our master plan. The pavement extends into the building creating a very interesting atmosphere. These are the proposed green spaces with a pre-existing, and then stretching our boulevards even further into more green space. Now back to the spines. Let's see, the pavement itself and the roads are really catalysts itself, because street life is really city life. As architects, we focus on what's going on in the building, but what's going on around the building. And that's going to be a real focus on my building, or in my project. So now looking onto what's on these spines, we have education in purple, then food, cultural, and in yellow, we're going to have arts. So why the arts? And then the orange is where my building is placed. These are what I imagine the life on the street will be with these spines. These spines are taken out, have much space taken out of them to provide different atmospheres, and what these atmospheres can hold when the spaces change in larger and smaller contexts. Now, zooming in, these were multiple spaces I thought that had great opportunity. And one I went to was this site on the bottom left of my master plan. It seems like on the edge, but why? Because this street or this intersection has everything. So this is viewing where my building will be placed. This new beautiful street with, what's it called, the light rail. Then we're going to shift our view to the left. This is the Japanese Cultural Center, and then the museum just down a block away, or a building away. Now we're going to take 100 feet step back, and this is the new bus terminal on the left, and not to mention the SciArc student housing on the right of this intersection. So real multicultural space that has a lot of opportunity, and I'll be placing my building right in the middle of that. So this is the diagram of a structure. The bays change from 20 feet by 20 feet to 20 and 40, and then 40 and 40, depending on what is necessary. So once I have that grid, I place these spines. So I've talked about the spines really on the facades. So now my partie is really like a geode, where it's a simple shape cut in the middle, and then you can see all the intricacies within it. So these are the spines that no longer are on the outside, but on the inside. So these are double height with the second floor on top, then the double height, or excuse me, double floors, then these are the double height. These are the vertical cores, the courtyards, the program, the extensions. So now we're getting into what's surrounding my building, the extensions, and then the singular and the many, which I'll get into, which is the programming of these extensions. Back to where my building is, I shift it down. So it takes full advantage of this intersection, and I can really push this sidewalk, making it much larger. So let's zoom in a little bit. This is the building. This is the actual building without all that around it. This is the first floor, where there's the cafe, administration, one giant theater and multi-purpose. This building is really for the arts. So there's going to be dance rooms and theaters and green rooms, screening rooms, exhibits, the studios above, but really the courtyards bring natural light into the entire building. So now let's focus on the extensions, the singular and the many. On the left, there's the singular, where there's slides, single seats, and habitable stairs. Then on the right, bleacher stadiums. And then on the bottom there's bleacher stadiums that go into a slide. And then there's also space for gardening equipment underneath some of these bleachers. So going up, looking up above, there's a roller rink, there's reflecting pools, there's nice long ribbons to get into the side of the building, not just the two main entrances on either right and left. And then there's even more bleacher seating for this corner theater, as well as a playground for the children that could be being taught the arts and then also enjoy this building. Now going a floor above, there's a double height the courtyards, dance rooms, studios. One thing of note is that there's a green room and a special booth for the artists who may come and visit and perform here. Now, cutting through the first section where there's the slides, and habitable circular seating and section, and then the stadium, which or this can be a theater, stadium, really multi-purpose, like large gathering space, and then the stage, the stage floating in air. Then this really highlights the double height and courtyard aspects of the building, as long as these long extensions. Then finally, the courtyard spaces where it undulates in height and position with more programs surrounding it. This is my precedent. You can see how the extensions is exaggerated with this grid that is very strong throughout my building. Now, this perspective, or this axon, shows the two buildings that I mentioned before, the museum and Japanese Cultural Center, and the relationship of that intersection with my building. Now, zooming in, you can see the roof plane as well really is cut up and divided. The section perspective, where we have the stacked veins, or stacked spines, excuse me, above one another, and how it opens and closes. Then really this perspective is really to show the porosity of what the walls will look like. There's the solid, and then there's kind of that see-through, which I imagine could be a real experience to see when viewing the arts, for instance, dance. And then the courtyards as well. The interior one, where there's the double heights and courtyard spaces. Then an external one, this is netting, not a chain link fence. And how the singular, let me go back, the singular where there's slides and seating. Then this is the many, where there's the bleacher seating with the stage. And these are glass panels that can rise up above. And that's it.
You know, first thing I'll say is I appreciate how you've kind of taken on the whole site. It's a big site, right? You've thought about kind of every corner of it, and you've extended the program out to all the edges. So you know, I congratulate you on that. Not just setting the building in an empty space. It does seem like there's a lot of volume. Like, can you tell me about the percentage? Like, is the percentages? Is there really four? Are you kind of addressing those four areas: interaction, education, specific, and plaza? And how much leeway have you taken with those square footages?
So, in fact, I haven't had to, going back all the way to just the profile or the envelope of my building, with all the cutouts and double height spaces, I am smack right. Like, I am exactly what I need to be for, I think it's 40,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the extensions, I don't count, and the plaza.
Yeah.
So that's why it really looks massive.
So then in the volume of your building, what do you consider the plaza space?
Within the courtyards is with, or the plaza space is the entire space to the above it or to the right in the axon, with the roller rink and ribbon shadings. But yeah,
okay, I meant the 10,000 square foot of
oh yeah, that's just
that's your courtyards.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a really LA building, like that one image that you showed with from the exterior, where you know there's keep going. Yeah, that one really, it feels like indoor outdoor space, and there's kind of a lot of opportunity to move in and out of the building, and transparency, And I'd love to know more about your facade. I wonder if you need to expose the grid everywhere, or could the facade kind of hang on the outside of the grid in certain parts to kind of change the nature of how you perceive the building, but where the grid would be more like a shadow on the back of the facade in some way, or a different, you could have a different organizational strategy for the facade. But I appreciate the way you've been able to take over the site and have those kind of varying degrees of interior and outside, inside.
Cole,
and outside.
just to be clear in my own mind, that there's your building proper, and then there's these two wings of the building which are not part of your program per se, but you sort of envision their extension. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Let me see if I can.
I think no, that's clear. I think that's the building. It's
Right.
I think it's super interesting. It seems to me, if I were to just be flip about it, it seems like a linear building that dreams of being a matte building.
Yeah.
And so it seems to like want to be extended. So it's almost like I want the whole site to be this, because when you show the renderings, the perspective renderings, it's thinner than I imagine. Like looking at this, it seems like you have these squares and the grid seems quite wide, but then in the perspectives, we're seeing sort of that's a long one, but like we're sort of close to like this one, like that we can see through the whole width of the building. It's not that it's a mistake, but it's sort of weird to me in a way that we would want to see the whole width of it at any one point. The urban gesture you make is about the sort of undulating facade line, which I think is an interesting take. And I totally respect the fact that you're going to like take that into the interior. In the urban scale, you create a series of niches, which would want to assume like create entry and inhabitation. I think when you bring it into the building, it's an interesting idea, but then what you are doing is trying to take a double-loaded corridor and render it ambiguous because you have niches on either side. And so like this perspective I actually hate. It's well done, but the fact that we can like totalize the building and understand its width and dimension seems to be like counter to what most of your interest in the building is, or the fact that we can see this long corridor. Because to me, it seems like most of your intention is about trying to obscure how we understand being in the building versus its perimeter. Of course, it has a perimeter, but on the inside, it seems like the logic of the courtyards and the other things would make you want to be more immersed in it, in a way. I don't think you've like made a mistake in the building. It just seems like, I do think it like wants to be wide. You didn't go very high. It's a 2-story building, but it seems like it wants to literally not just spread out along the length of its linearity, but kind of spread out across the whole site. And that you would use this logic to create a whole block building that would have these apertures.
Yeah, I agree with John that I rather see this as a building that occupies the whole site. I know you were forced to do a building of 2 to 4 floors. That's your dilemma. But I think it would be much more convincing if I would not say this is a building, but I might have bits and pieces of buildings, and they are just scattered throughout. And then also the circulation would work more convincingly, because right now these little courtyards, I have no idea what it's supposed to happen there. I can hardly occupy these little courtyards. And
Yeah,
so they're just decorative. So I don't know why that should be the case. So that's one thing that and so it feels like on the right, this axon shows it really clearly. The part on the right is just tacked on the park, and then there's the building on the left, whereas they should be one, they should merge or mesh. But I really love the idea of that scaffold that is, an armature that can then be occupied, but your floor plan is somehow counter to that. Your floor plan is so figured out because you had to, instead of leaving things vague. So if it's a catalyst, an urban catalyst, and I say the population, whoever lives there, I guess there's housing around it, I hope, otherwise where are all the pedestrians coming from? So then they might, there might be a community group and they might take over a space. It's almost like squatting an area. So it's much more radical and more less prescribed. And there is a scaffold, and maybe you give them sets of materials or elements they can use in order to modify spaces or set them up temporarily. So it's a much looser program and set of actions. But I know within that studio, you're probably not allowed to do that. It gets, it just goes away from the premise of that.
Well, it's strange how he articulated, because this is really, the building's here, right? And this grid is as
Right,
strong as it
right.
is in the building,
I
but
know.
this could have kind of broken down here, and then it could have also kind of extended this way a little. You could have
Right.
extended out this way, and maybe it goes to one story, or you kind of focus it on one area, so it looks like it's an extension of the building. But maybe it could have been more modulated as you took over, right, as opposed to being solid on the street and kind of blank on the back.
It also doesn't have to be the same grid everywhere.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
could alternate, right? You could just triple it. And so you, again, if this is to be occupied by somebody or a group, there could be big things, there could be small things.
Yeah.
So that is also an element that bothers me a little bit, that everything is just this relentless. I don't know, what did you say, 20 by 20, and then sometimes 20 by 40.
Yeah, no, my structural grid is actually a lot more complex than my facade. Because my structure grid, it gets like undulates in size. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back to the comment where there was a question of like the square footage you were given versus what you wanted to do, and Irene was saying that like that's your dilemma. And I just wanted to like underline that comment, because what I really appreciate about this project is you do have a dilemma. Like you set a kind of intellectual compositional problem for yourself of dealing with this notion of the grid, dealing with this sort of question of like, you're trying to create a grid structure that defies orientation and directionality. So instead of having a spine in the grid, you try to like make it undulating. I think that's a fantastic conceptual intuition on your part that then makes it a challenge. And so here in this project, I can see its faults and potentials because of the clarity of the conception of it, which I think is like a fantastic architectural achievement. I mean, I really do appreciate that. I do think, and the realization that like certain attitudes about the composition are going to render some things more available and some things less. So when you say like, oh, my facade is actually simple compared to my grid, I'm like, well, yeah, because you're sort of a plan driven, trying to work through these things. And so it makes sense that these things have effects. And so I think it's a really instructive project in that regard.
Yeah, that's a great place to leave it. Great set of comments, I think. And Cole, I think I saw this project once at mid-review, maybe. It's come a long way, and I find it like endlessly fascinating, like what you could do with it, what you could do with it. It's more of a system rather than a building, which is really interesting. So
thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, Sophia, you're here? Yeah. Hi, Sophia. If you caught onto the rhythm, by the way, it was like 2 of mine, 2 of Sensolis's, 2 of Miwako's, 2 of Ruben's, and then it kind of like changes. So I mean, that's why we're trying this format. It's like a kind of smattering of different approaches to the site and the project. So
okay, is that full screen?
Yeah.
yep, and we can hear you.
So I'm Sophia. So this is my proposal for an educational catalyst in Los Angeles, California. We start off with a site plan with the master
Can I
plan
stop you for 1 second? Sorry, is there a way? Do you have like a better mic or something? Your voice is a little muffled, or maybe like you just need to hold the AirPod up to your while you're speaking. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's very hard to understand. Yeah.
Okay. Is this better?
Oh, much better.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I've had those for a couple of years.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start off with a site plan at 1 to 500 scale with the urban master plan inserted. And then highlighting the high school, Felicitas and Gonzalo Mendez High School, which is directly across the river and the railroad tracks from the master plan site. The educational district of the master plan aims to connect to this high school. So here they both are pictured together. The high school itself works with a number of community partners, and they've actually produced really incredible results for the students. The students at that school consistently test well above the district average, but the offices of these community partners are spread all across the city. So the educational district aims to bring those partners closer to provide better results for the students. The project plot is located right in the middle of the educational district and the high school. And this is the footprint. Access to this site from East First Street. It extends from light and tram rail stops, and then a pedestrian bridge on the north side of the site across the Los Angeles River that connects the high school through this front plaza on the top into the building. This connection is highlighted by this concept model kind of in plan, which shows the link, that piece of wire being the bridge between the high school and the project plot. So this is visible in the site section as well, with that bridge extending all the way over the Los Angeles River and the railroad tracks. And here's just some added detail showing the activity that happens along that bridge, in the project plaza, and above the railroad. So moving into the floor plans, this is the ground floor, showing the kind of entry plaza at the top, going into the interior courtyard of the building. And so in Axon, this is the first floor, showing the cores, the lobby and workspaces, the art gallery, media tech, and then the second floor plan closes up significantly. The circulation becomes much more closed right around this central courtyard. So circulating around this glass box, and then the individual spaces kind of stem off of that. So on this second floor, the program is mostly classrooms, offices. This is the more educational program, so connected to the school specifically, providing space for the community partners and classrooms. Balconies are also added to the second and third floors, kind of poking holes in the facade a little bit and adding some outdoor space. On the third floor, the plan remains similar in terms of its circulation. Around the glass box of the courtyard still, spaces include a multi-purpose room, offices, more administrative, and balconies as well. This is shown in section 2. So this is a section looking at the media tech area in the multi-purpose room. This shows the kind of entry reception areas of all 3 floors stacked on top of each other, with the core on the left. And then this is a section through that central courtyard showing the views between all 3 floors. And this aims to create a connection visually between the different types of program, exposing the children and high school students to the media tech and art gallery and culture of Los Angeles. This section shows a lot of the balconies, and then the section perspective showcasing these outdoor spaces as well. This is the general axonometric of the project, featuring the facade in more detail, which is these screens that are able to be opened and closed according to the preferences of the inhabitants of the building, trying to play with kind of sensitivity to the community, sensitivity to the people who are going to be in these spaces. This also acts as a solar shading device. The screens on the south side can remain closed to protect from harsh sunlight. And they also filter the light into the educational offices and workspace on the second floor, as well as the media tech on the ground floor. And so in the morning, during the day, this facade is much more opaque. So it's kind of showing the different activity in that front plaza at the different times of day. And then in the nighttime, the screen lets light through, illuminating the interior as a sort of lantern, and showcasing the activity that's going on inside the building.
Can you go back to your plan? I wasn't sure. There's this U-shaped part of the building that opens up to what? Yeah, go back to your axon. Yeah, this one. So what's on the top that open U-shaped?
Oh, yes, that's a
Area, what does
terrace
this-
on the third floor.
So that's only on the third floor.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
And can you explain? I have a hard time following the circulation for all the projects, frankly. Can you show me like how I get in and up the building?
Sure. So this front courtyard here, coming down from the stairs, this is that pedestrian bridge.
Uh-huh.
You're kind of led through this courtyard,
Okay.
through this plaza into the interior courtyard. And then let's see, it might be easier to see in the
Plan.
in the axon of the first floor. Okay, so this is that courtyard right there. And then this is that lobby space. So this is the main entrance. And then from there, there's a core on the left here and a core in this part of the building that brings you up. And then on the second and third floors, the circulation is just these little hallways around that interior courtyard.
And the core is both fire stair and an elevator in both cases?
Yes, yes.
And yeah.
But it's a mixed group of people that argue. It's not a school. So what's the program again? There, anyone from the community can go in there to take
So
classes, or
the
what happens there? I didn't
the
get
first-
the connection to the high school. I didn't understand that either.
Sure. So the first floor is more of an open to the public program. That's the Mediatek, the art gallery, and the workspaces. But once you get to the second floor, that becomes more private. That's specifically for the offices of the community partners and the classrooms for the high school students.
But I think I mean, I really like the building. I think the shade idea is really lovely, although I think there's like technical qualifications I won't bore you with, but I think the concept's really beautiful. I just wonder, and it's more general, but like high school students taking classes is still public, I would say. It's a qualified public. And so I just have a hard time with a lot of these buildings not envisioning some kind of visible staircase. Like the going into the fire stair is the primary way. I know there's an elevator, but like elevators, particularly for a building that's not very high and has high school students going into it, that means like at least 20 students are leaving at any one point. It seems somehow like to miss some other kind of circulation. Like maybe I'm just being conservative, but it seems to me like in the decorum of the building, you would arrive and have some way of envisioning its verticality as a stair or something. So I think that's because I like the idea of the courtyard and the way it wraps and the other parts. I think that's really fantastic. And I'm intrigued by the notion that you bring people deep into the building through the courtyard to enter. Like, I don't think that's right or wrong, but it's intriguing because that means you can really penetrate the plan quite deeply. And I think that would have implications for where you put the core. So instead of having to have the stairs near the perimeter, you could have it on the very deep inside, but still accessible. Like there would be things that would happen with that I think you're starting to hint at. But I think the circulation somehow doesn't participate in that organization of its verticality. I think in the plan level, they're all great. And then like in this too, they're like really thoughtfully laid out. But the vertical I'm suspicious of, just to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Kaylee did it well in the first project. She had this big circular stair on the corner. That was clearly a public stair, and it was like monumental, and that was just clear. I didn't have to search for it. In this building, you would have to have signs, staircase, exit, or whatever. So you rely heavily on signage in order to find spaces, whereas you're supposed to just automatically be led to it. But I was curious if that connection to the high school, I mean, it's quite far away, that high school, if that exit or entry to the bridge should be part of the building. If that should run into your building, through your building, I don't know. So because if there is a clear connection between these two, I don't have to separate it out. And I think that would be great if that bridge, and you never show it in your drawings either. So if I want to make a connection, I need to show it, I need to draw it. And then I might say, oh, wait a minute, couldn't that be run into the courtyard? Or couldn't part of my program stretch out and be the bridge? so that I'm not
Yeah,
getting out of the building on a bridge and then I have this endless trek over to the high school. I might even expand the program and go beyond what's required and say, oh, you know, in the future, phase 3, there are several buildings on the bridge, and the bridge becomes not just a circulation connector, but there is program on that bridge too that really emphasizes the link between the two. So I think that could have been a fantastic kind of element or part of the project, to get away from, okay, here's a building, here's the square, here it's like a very nice courtyard building, but it needs a little bit of attention of a problem. It's like when John said before, who was that before? Cole had a problem with his building, a dilemma. You need to recognize your dilemma and just make it start working. Get away from this nicely composed, all in itself, you know, logical building, but then there's this other part that you just leave out.
Yeah, it would have been a good opportunity also to address the verticality, I think, that John's bringing up, because it seems like the bridge is like at the 3rd floor level, right? So now you have to go down across the courtyard and back up those big stairs, right? And if you could get there from different levels. A good building to look at would be the Morphosis Caltrans building in LA.
Okay.
Because they have an outdoor, you know, the screen that wraps the outdoor courtyard, which could, you know, that could be your passageway onto that bridge. And then the courtyard goes deep into the building like you have. I don't know if you enter this way, but you enter the building all the way inside of that, you know. So this kind of enclosed courtyard, and then the internal courtyard of the building, and this kind of wrap that could be your bridge. You know, all the pieces are there to kind of connect them together. It's just thinking about them, stepping back a little bit and thinking about them a little differently, you know, and kind of uniting the whole site. I wonder what Irina and John think about, you know, most of the projects we've seen are very rigorous grid, right? And they, even the fact that this just looks like it's cut off, you know, and but then there's a really rigorous facade that wraps all 4 sides the same way, whether it's a courtyard or a train side or a corner, you know, an urban corner. You know, like I'm always thinking, like, how could you do something like maybe the stair could be on this angle. There's so many things that are influencing this site, from the trains to the other grids to, you know, why do we see so many, and they're all well done, I think, rigorous and beautiful, but why do we not see a little more playfulness in
That's
kind
the
of
LA architect in you, Todd, who wants the playful gesture in the
It
rational
seems
framework.
it seems very European.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would posit, like, sympathetic to the students, they lack a front. And because I think it's not clear what the front is to these sites, because it's a made up site, or like you're making the site. So there is there's ways to get in the buildings, but they don't have fronts or sides or backs or orientation. Or which it's a slightly different comment than the playful gesture, which I totally agree with. But like the playful gesture would come in relationship to some site force or some exigency. And right now, everything feels even, because I think you see the site as evenly important, as opposed to like having a hierarchy that, like, oh, I need to connect to the bridge here, or I need to, like, nobody's going to see this side, so it's going to be like where I put some trash cans, or this side's going to be really amazing, so I'm going to put a neon facade, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think they have orientation. And I think it's a little bit because I don't know if you probably didn't go there, and it's also something you've made up the whole site in a way. You know what I mean? Just like developmentally to like introduce that category, that hierarchy.
I mean, where's the parking? How do you get into the parking garage? That always kind of defines the back of the building or the side of the building, right? You want to be away from that. You know, where does deliveries come in? The Morphosis building has one whole side that's panels, like photovoltaic panels, because that points towards the sun. So yeah, you kind of have to decide what do those different sides do.
It would be cool to actually have a parking garage. You know, there's nothing wrong with a great parking garage above ground. And then
Sure.
that is part of the site and that defines your clear entry.
We'll see one eventually today. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
we will?
Yeah, but I think it's
Okay.
an important point Todd makes. He makes it sound more exciting. I feel like when I say it, it's just like backs and fronts and boring hierarchies. But like, I think it's the entertaining of difference, which is the main point. Like the buildings have entertain difference, but in their orientation or priorities, whether it's parking or solar or entry, and that makes the buildings differentiated. And I feel like they do tend to be evenly developed, like in a 360 way. Yeah, I think
Listen,
that's
John,
true.
we don't do difference at Tulane. No, I'm kidding.
I doubt that.
I'm kidding. I think that's a great set of comments. I actually wrote it all down to relay back to no, I think it's like stuff that we should think about, you know, for the next iteration.
Sure.
And Sophia, I really loved your project. I mean, I think it's beautifully drawn, beautifully presented, very kind of comprehensive project. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned Irena's going to be coordinating next semester, so y'all
Get ready.
Yeah, the trigger came too early in a way. Yeah.
We're just preparing them for Irena.
Okay. Yeah. You'll have to loosen up next semester.
They're gonna hold you to that, Irena. Okay.
Oh yeah, we'll see.
All right. Thanks, Sophia. It's
Great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Great work. Let's see who's next here. Okay, Will Madden,
Yep.
looking fresh, ready to go, yeah?
Yes, sir. Let me just pull this up.
I feel strangely like the MC of this thing. And just like emceeing the whole event, but all right.
Okay. So hello everyone. Thank you all for joining us today in our review. This is my proposal for a expo / conference center located in our site near downtown Los Angeles, California. So this building design stems from my original goal in my master plan, which was to frame the view of downtown Los Angeles through the orientation of a boulevard. The circle in this image is over the densest part of the Los Angeles downtown area, and the line extends down to the back of our site. And I use that angle to sort of direct the focus when looking down the boulevard from east to west, so that that view of the densest part is sort of that highlight at the end of the boulevard. Here it is, a little closer image. This red line is that sort of angle orientation directed towards downtown, and these are my street structure in the master plan. Residential areas are mainly on the north side of the boulevard. Public areas are on the south side of the boulevard, and then green areas sort of enclose both of those residential and public areas on both sides. So when choosing the site, I wanted something that was visible from the entrance of the boulevard, so that I was framing the view of downtown Los Angeles on one side, but also framing the view of my building when looking at it from the other side. Here's my previous figure grounds drawing of my master plan. That area is more heavily populated with other buildings. And then I revised my figure ground to sort of open up that new site to more views when you're entering the boulevard from that west side of the site. Here's my new master plan, which kind of shows these green areas and open spaces that allow for these views towards the new site and towards the proposed building. So in terms of building context or building concept, I did want to aim for a structural building, given that one side was to frame the sort of glorious view of downtown Los Angeles skyline. I want to also frame the view of this sculptural moment on the other extreme of the angle of Master Plan Boulevard. So I began with this block. I split it in half and played with the lengths and heights of both members. Then opened up the middle so that it opens up towards the downtown Los Angeles skyline and creates a sort of open space through the middle of it. Next, I have a big room that sits on top of the smaller area. And then it fits in to the volume just like that. Moving on to the site axon. This image shows the plaza area that's opened up towards the entrance of the boulevard and is sort of opened up and framed by that entrance on the opposite side of the boulevard. Also, it shows my environmental strategy of using a reflecting pool to collect rainwater and reuse this water in the building, and also have the possibility of draining to the river in case it does rain too much. Here's a perspective looking from the building towards the downtown skyline, leaving that whole area open so that that view really does pop and stand out. Next, moving on to the site plan. This site plan it shows the reflecting pool in that plaza a little bit more and shows how on the bottom side it is more open to the public area, and then on that top part it is that environmental strategy of using the reflecting pool. Here's a diagram for program distribution. My office and conference centers on the bottom floor. The auditorium is a large volume on top of the conference center with a multi-purpose room, which could be used for receptions or gatherings or meetings after any big expos. And then there's also a library media tech on the very top level. Moving into floor plans, the whole building is elevated on a surface, and that middle area is open and not enclosed, but the two volumes on the sides are. That stairwell in the middle is the primary vertical circulation of this building proposal. Second floor plan opens up to that auditorium and multi-purpose room, and then another floor of auditorium, library, and more library. This section perspective was mainly to highlight the big multi-purpose room. My goal of having it that high was sort of to open it up more like a ballroom and have this larger volume to, I guess, stand and gaze at the downtown skyline. Here's a perspective looking at the building from the tip of the plaza, looking down that reflecting pool. Here's a section of the auditorium, and then a section of the multi-purpose room. And here's a perspective of the multi-purpose room. And I believe that is it.
Did you describe, and I missed it, just like the building, talking about like a building full of differences? It seems like very much composed of a series of building fragments or elements. Like there's a kind of Miesian box and there's some other things. Did you ever describe like what makes the form of the different programmatic sections? Like they seem to have based on different building ideas. Did you ever talk about that sort of orchestration or semantic logic?
Honestly, I guess my main thing when it came to it was angled oddly, and it did have a bunch of different elements into it.
Uh-huh.
I initially did start with a sort of straight building, and then given that the angles of the top and lower half of the boulevard were both different, I sort of based my building angles off of the angles of the boulevard too. And I initially was planning on sort of having that main volume sit at the top, but I was thinking that it would be a more sort of dramatic look from the front if there was this sort of big extrusion that kind of like jolted out when you're looking at it from that front facade and onto the left side or the right side of the building.
Maybe we could go to a view of the building.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think your initial diagram made it look like it's all coming out of an operational strategy where you start with a mass and then you modify that mass and cut and insert. But then the building itself at the end looks like a collage of like 4 different buildings that you just took, you could collage it out of whatever. So yeah, I have a conflict with that too. I'm a confusion. Which one is it? Like, how do you explain the final building, or what does it represent? The collage sounds interesting to me because then you get pieces or areas between the various collage pieces. There is a theme, and there is that could have a consequence in the plan. And maybe this is part of where circulation would also be, the seams between the pieces of your massing. I don't know. I'm just rambling. Sorry.
I don't know. From my perspective, I like the way it's made of different pieces. So here's the playful building, right? And I'm surprised that you did say that you started with a form and cut away at it, where it definitely feels like you have 4 different elements that have been pulled together to do what they need to do, right? So this one piece that looks over the reflecting pool makes a lot of sense to me. It's kind of organized around the reflecting pool. It's lifted up, and then the cool thing is when you go inside it, you show me what you're looking at, right? Which is the downtown skyline. So that piece does its own thing, and then the piece on the right is about the auditorium, and I forgot what the piece on the left is, but that's another volume. And then you create this great space for this sculptural stair in the middle, right? So, and I think what you're doing is you're looking at the building sculpturally from the outside, but you're also developing each piece internally from the inside, and then resolving the relationship between those disparate pieces, right? And I don't know. I mean, that's how I hear like Frank Gehry works, right? He kind of has a box for each programmatic element. He stacks them up and looks at them sculpturally, and then he wraps them with the skin or something like that, right? So it really it's kind of looking at it from a distance and looking at it as a sculptural mass, and also kind of looking at it from the inside from a programmatic point of view. And I think there's a lot of people who work in that way.
See, I was thinking about Frank Gehry too. And so I think I think you should just be aware of what you do. So I like the idea of these collage pieces and elements, and then maybe the shape is not just because of the urban condition, but it's also because there's an auditorium inside, and instead of just cutting it off as you did in your section, I let that shape, that angled roof, be part of the space on the inside of the auditorium. It was weird. There was one section where you just squared it out, which was not necessary at all, because it would explain the shape or it would make use of it. So I think it's a great strategy, and then, as I said, maybe there is some more to do with the space in between these. Already one, you'd have the big staircase in there, but there might be other seams that give you an opportunity to develop another kind of vein that goes through the project, another layer.
Yeah, if you get to visit the his concert hall, the in-between spaces become performance spaces or places where stairs are, or in the concert hall, there's a lot of places to hang out, like between that intermission, and those are all formed by the space between the program and the skin, right? And so really delving into those in-between spaces that are formed and see what you can do with them.
Yeah, I mean, I had to step out for just a second. I think this is a really great view that for me is like holds the most promise of the project. In that, like, as I understand it, like you have this plaza space, you're trying to reconcile some degree of formality with it. There's other parts of it that have like various chamfers or skews that respond to different things. It sets up, a collage implies informality, but I think in this case, it might be like there needs to be more different kinds of like geometric considerations of like the various pieces. Like they can't just be in juxtaposition, they need to be in somehow coordination. And I'm reading like in this facade, I'm seeing a lot of it where you've got the metal frame and you've got that chamfered bit on top of it. That chamfered bit, I don't know if it's a stair, but I hope it's a stair. Like the thing that's happening, I don't know, Todd figured out how to draw on this.
We're like
It might
up
be
here.
beyond me.
We
Yeah,
actually
like
see-
that, and then just diagonally down into that part where you see that little white bit in the panel there.
In here and back in there.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's some
Is
kind
there
of
some kind of
coordination
connection?
between exactly. Thank you. And
Yeah.
so I think in this view it's really successful. When I see the axon, it seems a little bit more out of control in terms of like, well, what's the frontal part? What's the eroded part? Like I think you could have multiple ontologies, but I think it's still like not quite under control, I guess.
Well, where was that section?
This
that
one
you
right
just
here,
showed?
like
Yeah.
it seems somehow like this is where I think the question of like, oh, it seems very beholden to the urban diagram, and I'm not sure. Like, yeah, just like another. I mean, I like it. I'm just saying, like, to develop it, you would need some kind of like three-dimensional geometric system that helps you to resolve all these contradictions. Like that's the way it would develop.
Yeah. You also would imagine like Will made like 17 different models of this. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And like how they relate
That's probably
to
the
each
way
other.
you would do it. Yeah,
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I think that's probably a good place to leave it. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, thank you all. I think it was really good feedback. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah, super compelling project. And
Yeah.
there you go, Todd. There's your difference.
All right. This is a good one. Omar, I need to leave now. I don't know if you noticed I could only stay till 11.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no
So
problem.
I'm really grateful. It's great to see projects about Los Angeles and from people outside Los Angeles. I don't know. Did you guys come and visit?
No, unfortunately, we couldn't get anyone to shell out for it.
Well, there's a train that comes all the way here.
Is it the Amtrak?
Yeah, you can take Amtrak right to
Nice.
Union Station from
Someone
your
was just
room.
telling me there's an Amtrak to like DC from New Orleans too.
Yeah.
Thanks for
But you
being.
know, take a look at what's going on out here. There's Mike, Tom Main and Frank Gehry are kind of
Right.
our elder statesmen, but guys like Lorcan O'Herlihy or Michael
Oh, yeah.
Malton.
We had a
Larry
lecture.
Serpa.
We had a lecture from Lurkin or someone from Lurkin's
Yeah,
office.
Lorcan probably was there. He's great. There's a lot going on that is worth looking at. And if anyone's in town, and look me up at marchstudio.com and
Definitely.
stop by and see what we're doing.
Thanks so much
Yeah.
for being here.
All right, thank you. Nice to meet you
Okay.
guys.
Nice to meet you.
Bye,
Mhm.
Todd.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, Arena, John, do y'all need a break? You good to go? You want a little break?
Oh,
Maybe
I
just
need
a
I
quick
need a
one.
break.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
need a bathroom break, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you want to come back around 11:20? Is that okay?
Okay, that
Oh,
sounds
that's
good.
more than great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks.
Hi. Did Emily go yet, Kaylee?
Not yet, but Leandra did.
Okay. How did Leandra's go?
It went okay. I think Kintaro's and like that whole group is a lot more focused on the master plan.
Oh, that's too
yeah.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think like across the board, it's been interesting to listen to them, but
This is a
Yeah.
good room.
yeah, I feel like
This is a really good room. Even with the criticism. Did Evan go?
yeah, I got like the second, like the very end of his feedback, and it sounded like it went well.
Okay, that's
Evans went really well. Yeah.
yeah, Evan. This is so sad. I want to see these. It's all right though. Who else? I'm looking at the list here. Okay, so Ben and Sig should be going, or they just
Yeah.
went?
Yeah, I think Ben's probably just starting. I haven't been in that room yet.
Okay. Well, tell everyone good luck if I don't catch them.
Yeah, more people are in studio than I thought there would be.
Yeah, cool. I think I have to check out of my hotel and then so Rain is the host, right? Okay. I'm really scared to do this. Maybe I'll just try to like carry, like just hold my laptop to the lobby or something. Okay, so I'll be back in like 5 minutes.
So
Hey.
Omar, we are two reviewers now for the rest, or?
Yeah, I can jump in too.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
I'll just join the review, but I have to take care of a few things, so I'm gonna let Ethan start and then I'll be back.
Okay. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oops. Okay, so this is my proposal for the Los Angeles Community Youth Center. Just a few things that will be addressed: site research, my original master plan and updated master plan, and then I'll move into some diagrams on my volumes and circulation and show site buildings and site building plans, and then plans of the building, section perspectives and sections, and the axonometric. So we began by doing some research before the master plan on the downtown districts in Los Angeles. So here's a quick diagram of some of the surrounding districts, and you can see our site towards the center of this image is kind of at the intersection between the Civic Center and the Arts District, with many nearby neighborhoods as it's at the edge of downtown. These are some maps of public elementary schools, public middle schools, and public high schools in downtown Los Angeles. And this kind of helped me decide on my proposal to offer a youth center based on the number of schools and the kind of lack of nearby youth centers in the area. So here's my original master plan diagram with 4 main typologies. The darker green 2 strips in the middle are residences and urban agriculture. The red is retail and mixed use, and the gray is civic mixed use, and then the lighter green is more park space. And here is the plan for my master plan with the building shapes, and the original buildings kept on site are kind of the more irregular shapes. Here's a quick perspective of some from the Los Angeles River. And this is what I decided to do with my master plan to update it. I opened up this large plaza near this existing warehouse building that we had to keep, just because it was at the kind of entrance to the site, coming from the left and towards the middle of this this main road that I had down the middle, and also kind of at the intersection between the areas of the site. So here's with the building placed on, and just a quick axon of the master plan with the modified site without the building. So how we got the volume, I started with a large base volume to house my kind of more specific special program for the youth center, and I wanted to submerge that. So that would be about 12 feet underground and 12 feet above ground. So it could have access to lots of natural light while still being underground. And then I split it to create circulation access and designated circulation as a long corridor on the submerged floor and through the middle of the ground floor. I followed by placing a slab above those 2 kind of separated now volumes, added circulation that was continuous throughout from beneath the slab into the submerged floor, through the building placed above the slab, and then followed by putting a screen around the upper building. Here is a site plan of some of the ideas I tried to focus on, where the left side of the site is left to be outdoor program more designated to the youth center. So there's a soccer field, the jungle gym, playground, climbing wall, and kind of like a circle of benches for outdoor activities. And the right side is a little bit more dedicated to the library aspect. So it's quiet reading areas, kind of stair-stepping, grassy steps, fountain, trees, and a exterior perspective showing kind of the bridge between the ramp leading down to the submerged floor, as well as the stepping stairs of grass on the left side towards the clerestory windows. And another perspective from taken on the slab, looking at the building placed above the slab, and kind of the life going on around it. Here's the plan of the submerged floor. So this is essentially you'd get in from this large ramp down here, but there's also continuous staircase in the middle and on the right side. And the program here is dedicated to youth center, kind of active activities. So there's a pool, a gymnasium with a basketball court and volleyball court, There's a fitness room, locker rooms, and lobby space. The main floor is left to be much more minimal, so less interaction. It's all underneath the slab. But the only interior enclosed spaces are this cafe in the middle with the core here, and then the core on the other side. The rest is clerestory windows looking into the pool and the gymnasium, and then the beginning of large grand stairs on the left side up to the slab. On top of the slab is where the building becomes a little bit more academic and library focused. So there's a gallery, classrooms, meeting rooms, private and group tutoring rooms, homework help, a lot of just rooms that can be multi-purpose, but focused for more education side of a youth center. And the second floor of the building above the slab is more library focused. So there's bookshelves, reading space, and double heights, as well as offices. Here's a section cut through the gym and seeing kind of an elevation of the building behind, or the building above the slab, and a perspective interior of the gymnasium with the clerestory windows that you can see in and see out and get natural light. Again, moving through the building here above, you can see the reading area and some like beginning entrance of the gallery. And then seeing the ramp on the other side, as well as the cafe space in the middle. That is outdoor seating, but indoor like kitchen and counter. And then a section cut through the pool, as well as seeing the steps on the plaza. Here's a perspective from the interior of the pool room with larger windows on the side where the grass slopes down, and built up a little bit higher to the ground floor or to the ground plane, where you can see the cafe behind and more space towards the left side. This is a longitudinal section so that you can see kind of all the program throughout the building at once, because it's a sectional building and much like a very long building is less than it is wide. So you can kind of see all the program at once happening, and a section perspective showing the same pool cut, but showing the depth of the corridors, both on the left side of the submerged floor and the right side of the upper building. Here is a site axonometric showing kind of the liveliness of the outdoor program, as well as the interaction with moving into the like up to the slab and underneath being the clerestory windows. And that's it. Thank you.
In terms of a cross section, it's just that one through the pool. We don't have like one through the ramp or anything.
There
thought there
is
was
a
one.
section cut here through the
Yeah,
ramp.
that
I
one.
see. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I
Yeah.
missed that. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you can go back to your summary board. Can you answer a conceptual question about like the replication of the ground plane? Like this project seems to be very interested in like liberating the ground plane for having all these like park settings, and then putting some stuff underground to like then make you go into the earth, and then also on the, I don't know, plinth terrace, like then the upper parts of the building get very small in relationship, so you've like remade the ground again. It seems very interested in like occupying the ground, and I'm just wondering if you could give a kind of like, I don't know, conceptual reasoning for your interest.
Yeah, so I really wanted to focus on kind of the combination of stereotomic and tectonic elements. So by kind of placing something more into the ground and having it be like this large volume that is kind of immovable, and then a kind of thick slab, and then to try and create an almost different building while still, I tried to keep it continuous, but kind of creating some type of different volume that almost looks like it was just placed on it. Could be in a different place, but is where it is. And just to like give it contrast between what's stuck in ground in the earth is a lot larger and more movable, and then the kind of lighter element on top, which is also why it's glass with a screen.
That's a fantastic answer. The question for me then is on that middle left-hand drawing, which is the axon of the building on the site. I want to ask it as a question, but I'm just going to make it a comment. Like the thing to the right, which is the sort of like interim plinth that gets you up to the top. To me, that seems like a strange anomaly in your system, where it's like you've made these articulations of these levels, but then offered this sort of alternate route on the long axis. For somehow that seems to be like a different kind of logic that comes in. I don't know if it's a
Yeah.
location or if its existence. Somehow that seems to be like
Yeah.
works against that idea a little bit.
Well, the idea for the kind of stairs was that this kind of axis below the plan here
Uh-huh.
is the main street entering the site. So it was kind of a way to like bridge the other side of the building that kind of gets cut off from the plaza with also moving into the building.
Right.
But I would say that the stairs there were kind of more as a more obvious way to get from the ground level to the slab.
Right.
As like in the Axon, you can't even see the other cores, which would be within here, and take you to inside this building. This is the only way to get to the actual slab and move around.
No, I understand that. That's a functional reasoning, and that might be right.
Yeah.
It just seems like you have this ramp that goes down. Above that, you have this split in that level of the building. It seems like all of that activity would be centered around that to like open up this like long access to that other level. To me, just like organizationally seems like it's in the wrong spot. Like it seems somehow would want to be part of that off-center cut that you've already made twice, and then you would offer a third system there. Just yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I also thought this duplication of the ground plane seems to weaken the activity on it. So you have an interior corridor for the upper level building, and then you also have the outside where you have to get to. But once you're inside the building, there's no reason anymore to go out. So that whole plinth or level seems very vast and not very. There's nothing going on. I mean, there are a couple of benches that you draw, but why would I go there? So the activity is inside and you're not bringing it outside. And also I love that half sunken building and the idea that you go into the ground. In terms of its program and activity, I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if I could open up the doors and that, what is it, a basketball court or whatever's inside there, the athletic program could spill out and you could really use inside outside simultaneously. Maybe the pool is sunk, but to just sink everything takes the activity away from around the building. So it seems you act as if you would have hardly any space and you would be in an urban area where you need to be concerned about height. But you're even lower than the existing building on the side, right? The warehouse.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why you lowered it, why you sank it into the ground in that location.
Okay.
And then also I would love to see the relationship to that existing building that's left there. Is there a dialogue that you want to make? What you didn't even show a photo of that building. So since you made a choice to put it there opposite this, I would love to know more about that building and also the connection or not connecting it, separating it, and why. So your design, you just stop right there on the top and there's an empty spot and then there is some shape. But that's all you give me. I don't know where these people go in the building. Where is the activity at that building? I think if you have an urban project, and I said it in the first one, it would be great to show the connections you make to the context.
Yeah, I think that's where I could take a step further and kind of redesign this empty warehouse that we've been given. The original idea for it was to be kind of like a music and like a music school, essentially, also focused more on children, but just like moving away from the activity and library side to more like music based and arts. But I did not end up kind of redesigning it and just left it as is, but I think that could be somewhere where this could expand.
I'm not even talking about redesigning. It's just like very diagrammatic.
Yeah.
Like not even redesigning it for the sake of that building, for the sake of
but
for the sake of your building, of your project. And I love the program of a youth center because I think, like in New Orleans, this is a dire need for youth centers. They're just not being built anymore or designed. And so I think it's a great program. And it has so many different aspects and elements that you can add to it. So I think it has a roughness and a toughness too that it could have. So it's not a precious building. It's not like an auditorium and a theater. So I think it's a great program, and it's a great choice to put it on that side next to that existing warehouse. But it needs to go a little bit further.
Yeah,
or it would be nice. Yeah.
I mean, I really do like the massing partie, like in its basic idea of having this long building that's then intersected by this ramp. I appreciate the gym and the swimming pool being lower because it renders its relationship to the street visual, not it's somehow like you can see it, but also it's sort of detached from it. And so I think that's really great. I'm just utterly convinced that somehow there's this axis that you go through it, and then you split here between the two programs. And I think that's a great opportunity, like have two entries there that you could then like divide the building between these different uses and get something out of it. I think this stairwell here really confounds me. I mean, it's a fire stair with an elevator in it. And then this elevator here, as we go up through the building, changes its door orientation 3 times over the course of 4 levels, which is a lot. Like, and so there's got to be some better placement for that elevator that would let it just be an elevator. And that's what I mean about like somehow that cross spine could be where you like organize the length of this building and then redistribute. And that's why I think that end plinth is sort of, because it seems like to have that level above the ground would want to be a qualified ground, which means not everybody can get on it. It's somehow more secured. It's a terrace. It's like somehow, and that's where I feel like that, if you bring it into that center area, it would be more controlled in some way. Maybe not secured, but controlled. Because there's already a lot of ground around it. So there's got to be something about going up to that level that changes the status or the decorum of inhabitation, which means I think just not everybody can do it, or not do it without being surveilled.
Okay. Yeah.
Great. I think that's a good place to leave it. What do you think, Ethan?
Yeah.
Thank
you
one
so
more
much.
thing. It could also be that my red line there, that instead of this ramp that's very particular, one element, the whole ground can slope down, and you could actually reveal the half underground level or connect it, not across the whole site, but maybe instead of just that ramp, it could widen, and then that program could actually slope down to it.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe.
So more of how it does on the left side of this rendering.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Great work, Ethan. I saw it at midterm and it came a long way.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris, you ready, Chris?
Yeah, just 1 second. Okay, can you guys see the presentation?
Yes.
So hi, my name is Chris, and today I'll be presenting alternative education, a space for adults to explore education outside of a traditional classroom. First, we'll look at the original master plan, which provides the foundation for many of the design choices of my urban catalyst. So here's the original site we were given to work with. When designing it, my partner and I decided to implement a grid system that resulted in square urban blocks in the center of the master plan and linear blocks on the north and south. We decided that square buildings with openings in the center for courtyard spaces would be the best design for the square urban blocks. And to create mobility between the courtyards, openings were cut on the ground floor as to create loops between the courtyard spaces. So here you can see the openings on the ground floor, and here's the final ground floor master plan. The red zone shows the site chosen for the urban catalyst. This location was chosen on the master plan because of its close proximity to the city. And this is the master plan, and this master plan introduces the urban catalyst in its context. And now to discuss how the building's form was made. First, the larger grid of the master plan was reduced to half the size to accommodate the relatively smaller size of the scale of the proposal. The first language of the building adopts from the master plan the linear bars of the buildings on the north and south of the site. And the second is the courtyard buildings. And when used together, these two languages create parallel linear bars with a perpendicular bar connecting the two and outdoor courtyard spaces surrounding the site. So here's an axon showing the original proposal for the master plan. And this axon shows the introduction of the catalyst and its relationship with the buildings of the master plan. So the catalyst also introduces porosity on the ground floor, much in the same way as the surrounding buildings. Two perpendicular cuts were made on the ground floor based on the alignments from surrounding buildings. And these openings allow for flow from the courtyard spaces of the catalyst with the larger surrounding context. So here we can see an axon of the site, and we'll begin looking at the building itself a bit closer. So here's the site plan of the project. Looking at the outdoor spaces, we can see several different zones. In the northeast is an outdoor sculpture garden. In the northwest is an outdoor market space. To the south of it is an urban garden, and to the right is an outdoor classroom. The ground floor of the building is the most public, with the cafe, exhibition space, and the library. Moving to the second floor hosts semi-public spaces such as the classrooms, the second floor of the library. The third floor hosts more private meeting rooms as well as the rooftop garden for agricultural education. The fourth floor hosts indoor and outdoor workspaces. And the fifth floor consists of administrative offices, which organize the building from most to least public from the ground up. This elevation of the building highlights the play and variation of windows on the facade, as well as the doubling of the facade at double height spaces and the distinction of the greenhouse facade from the building. This section cuts through the library and the greenhouse, as well as showing the relationship of outdoor spaces with the interior spaces. And lastly, this section highlights the double heights. Lastly, this section cuts through the perpendicular bar connecting two linear volumes, highlighting the indoor spaces as well as outdoor classrooms. So here's a perspective showing the outdoor classrooms in the south facade of the building. And this perspective shows the sculpture garden as well as the building from the east. This interior perspective shows the library, and this one shows the music room. Thank you.
So what's the width of your building? You have to, can you show the plan again?
Sure.
So it's always the same as this grid it's based on, right? What's that width?
37 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that.
So this one here, right? That's 37, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've seen that in previous projects that there is this kind of terror of the grid and the master plan that suddenly, but then there is also this mix of program in some cases where there are lots of different functions and programs in one building. And so then for me, it becomes a little bit questionable why I'm insisting, or while one is insisting on the same like extruded bar, or why is the width always the same? Couldn't it just respond then more to what's inside instead, and either double the grid or just have a more diverse rhythm of width and structural grid and whatever. And then right now it looks very diagrammatic. It's like a program diagram, and the program diagram becomes a building. And I think the next step would be to really go into the building and look at what's placed where and where do I make exceptions and emphasis. And it gets back to maybe some circulation is more important than other circulation. So bringing out one that connects all the levels instead of some that are just between two. So it needs, it lacks a little bit of that specificity.
Can you go to the first floor plan and just the front door? I'm always trying to figure out how to get in the building.
Sure. So,
Oh,
sorry.
interesting.
Yeah, there are two entrances right here.
And what about the third one below? What about this one?
Oh yeah, this is an entrance into the library.
I see. But they connect at an upper level. All the programs
Yes.
get connected. I mean, I think there's something to that. I do like the initial diagram of understanding that you have linear buildings and perimeter block buildings, and your diagrams are going to combine it. I mean, I agree with the comment that the widths might change, although I do think there's, in the perspectives in the section, I think you take advantage of altering the length and height. Like you do work within it. I just think width is the one you didn't quite get to. I think it really reminds me of literally the Bauhaus building in Dessau, like where you have these sort of like things that occupy the ground in one way, and then these bridging elements. And I think there's a real potential to that as something that could be occupied differently at different levels. One, I mean, it's the game of like same different or multiple singular. And I think that's really effective. I think the part I would press at is I love the skin. I love both the tone and the window, but I think it's so much everywhere that it becomes relentless. And when we see like that the interior of the music room is the same as the exterior of the overall facade, I just wonder if there'd be, I like that systems, like could there be moments where there's breaks in that system that might just open up the wall or make it more opaque, that there'd be another ordering system? Because it seems like some of those, of all these various programs you have in the buildings, that window fenestration pattern must be perfect for some and less perfect for others. And so I just think in the overall, if we go to one of the exterior views, which I think are really nice, the ubiquity of the skin just makes it, I think, too uniform. I mean, there's a little bit of a break above, I see, but I just feel like there's could be more breaks in that system. Like if this is the default background, that there might be bigger windows or bigger openings or ways to like orient oneself in the building. I feel like it's, and this is sort of like similar to the other comment, it seems evenly developed. And I think there could be moments of punctuation in it, both in the plan but for me more in the skin where it comes to the fore. That said, I really love the idea of the hybrid figure of it. I think that's a really fantastic point for introducing this building into the site.
Mhm. I think it's a relief here where you change the facade and you have all glass or something, big element. So that's already, it tells you that this is very successful to modify things and not rely on this one kind of rubber stamp. I know how it goes. I mean, you don't have much time and you're just trying to get this whole building under control. And so once you find a facade that seems work and it looks good, then you just don't have time to really look at every space at it. So I think you have some good pieces in it. Sometimes it's great to have windows that go all the way down to the ground, to the floor level. And then there's one that's up at the end, like underneath your ceiling, but it might not work for all the spaces. So yeah.
I might add my 2 cents to this one. Chris, I think it's really, really well thought out from the outside. I really enjoyed particularly the perspectives and the axon. I thought those were developed really well. John, I think the comment about the Bauhaus building, I just put a link.
Oh, good. I was just
uncanny. Uncanny.
Yeah, very much.
I don't know, Chris, if you haven't seen that, you should check out the link after this. But I think for me, the comment about the facade is true, and I think it's a result of in the section. If you could go to a section drawing, I might just draw on top of that. Maybe another one that's cutting through the larger portion of the building. Yeah, right here. That's good. That's good. I think there is variation in terms of like there's different floor heights, but I think there's not enough variation like within, you know, those like actually creating different types of spaces, right? Like I'm gonna draw this. I don't really mean it, but I'm just saying like there's like a number of things that you could do like on the roofs of these things to like kind of break down the scale, like even just drawing lines across and kind of letting some of the more hierarchical spaces feel different in the section that I think then could relate back to the facade and break it up as well. And I think that could really like solve a lot of the issues of the flatness or the issues of the uniformity of the project. I think can be solved in the section and then related back to the facade. But all that being said, I think it's a really nice project. I particularly like the program because I think it truly is a catalyst in that way. Like it would actually catalyze change for users of that area, and I really appreciate the sensitivity of that. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks,
you.
Chris. Okay, Ignacio Mota. You there, Ignacio? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone call you Iñaki? Or is that
No.
reserved for the dean?
That's just for the dean.
All right.
Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Ignacio, and this is my project, Paseo Catalyst. So I choose to name my project Paseo Catalyst due to its function and position on the site. What this means is that
Do we lose him?
so site plan in which we worked on groups of 2 at the beginning of the semester. In my
Ignacio,
group, one of our major focus. Yeah.
you're kind of dropping in and out. I would like stop your video maybe, like keep sharing your screen, but don't show your face just while you're getting through the presentation.
Okay. So is it better now?
Yes, try it, yeah.
So this is the old site plan in which we worked on groups of 2 at the beginning of the semester. In my group, one of our major focus was the pedestrian movement along the site. So to start deciding where would a building fit in the best and have the most impact on the site, I started by making some diagrams analyzing the main pedestrian movements, in which are shown with the 3 red arrow lines. After analyzing the pedestrian movement, I saw that by having 2 bridges, the movement would just continue straight and never making the whole site plan lack an important moment. This then made me to decide to just have 1 bridge center with a boulevard in the center, which will cause all 3 boulevards to meet up at the end of the site. After making this change and analyzing the pedestrian movements, I created an important location in the site, which then led to place my building there, where it will have a lot of impact and will be the icon of the whole urban design. Now, by having this building so integrated with the boulevards, I took the chance and developed a whole boulevard with its own green spaces, restaurants, and retail centers, which will give life to this paseo and will introduce the building's most important function, which is the market. Here's a site isometric, which shows the building's value to the site and shows a clear idea of what the center paseo will look like and feel like. This is a zoomed in 1:120 site plan, which shows a ground floor plan to emphasize how the movement can still go through the building connecting these boulevards. This is an arrow diagram to show the movement along the side and how it is all symmetrical and uninterrupted. Now, that's one of the roof plans, just showing the mass of the building in plan, and in red, the people and their movement. This is a pretty simple building axon to introduce a set of diagrams, which I'll show you right now. So the first diagram is a circulation diagram, which highlights all the circulation course along the building, this all includes stairs and elevators. The second diagram, it's a program diagram, which is color coded to show the distribution of the building. And lastly, on the diagrams, here's an arrow diagram, which highlights the movements of the building and how it is all symmetrical. And also, this diagram shows the alignment of every entrance and a way out of the building. So now we go to the ground floor plan, in which the integration of the boulevards and the building is shown with people in red. Also, for the plaza around the building, we can see these types of farmer markets, restaurants, and green spaces, which will pull people into the building. For the inside, we can see more restaurants and a continuation of the farmers of the market, the auditorium, the lobby or access areas, and the exhibition room. So here's the first floor plan, which we can find more market studios and meeting rooms. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but all the movement in the building is around the program, which I was inspired by Mies van der Rohe's idea of less is more, which then pushed me to a design where basically most of the program is in open space. And this is the second and last floor, where the library and green terrace take up all the space. Now moving on to the sections. Here's a side section where we can appreciate how the paseo cuts right through the middle of the building, making it the crossway to the end of the site. Also, we can appreciate the multiple heights of the building in the outside. This is the section 1. This section is taken from the market side, which is the left side of the building. Here we can see different height between floors and distinguish what's open and what's not.
Ignacio, you're going to have to speed it up a little. You're running out of time for the presentation.
Yeah, I'm almost done. And section 2, this section is taken from the back of the building, where one of my favorite interior spaces is shown. I call them the spiral stairs. These stairs connect the building from top to bottom, creating this height difference, not seen in any other part of the building. And this is a section perspective showing the auditorium, the exhibition gallery, and the spiral stairs. In this section perspective, we can appreciate movement around the building and the depth of the building. Now moving on to the perspectives. Here's the first perspective, which is taken from the front of the building. Seem like if you are walking towards the building from the paseo. And here's the opposite, walking out of the building, facing all the paseo and having all this program in front of you. And this is a side perspective, which shows the outside market and how this market would attract people to go into the building. Here's the inside market. And here's the spiral stairs, where you can appreciate the different height levels and all these open spaces in the building. And lastly, this is the studio perspective, which is taken from the second floor, and this is to show like the working environment of this building and all these open spaces inside the building. Thank you.
When you say open spaces inside the building, do you mean literally open air or just open to views?
Open to view.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you have seen the Crown Hall by Mies
I
van
have
der
seen the
Rohe.
Mhm.
It's kind of
Yes.
the same idea, having like all this working area open or connected.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think you're building like, yeah, I appreciate the reference to Mies. It seems like very invested in the site planning. Like
Yeah.
I'd offer appreciation that you've thought about the shape of the street furniture and the planting and the relationship to the master plan. You described it as a kind of iconic building. I think it's a nice building, but I would almost describe it as the opposite. It's almost an invisible building in relationship to like facilitating what you're calling the paseo and the circulation and the activity. I mean, that's sort of a Miesian thing. That's sort of
Yeah.
Benedict's like almost nothingness of it. So I actually appreciate that part of it. It seems to very much recede. I wouldn't say into the background. It's not invisible, but it's really a kind of scaffolding to support these various activities that you think are going to happen, that you say, tell us will happen.
Yeah.
And so it really moves its emphasis outside of the building. I mean, other people have shown site plans too, but I feel like this occupies more serious attention on your part than, I don't know, not to compare it to the others, but you seem quite serious about how this linear um, axis will move through your building, and your building will sort of pick up that activity. I think that's really well done. And I really love your spiral staircase, having asked everybody for visible, obvious staircases. I think you've given us a beautiful one.
Thank you.
Can you go to your floor plan, the first floor?
The first floor plan.
Yeah, ground floor.
This one.
Yeah. So the whole time you were explaining, I somehow in my mind, I was thinking, this is kind of like one of these train stations in Europe that have tons of circulation in them. And that's the main thing. And then like on the side almost are the functions, the luggage storage, the trains come in. And so there's tons of different program around it, but the major element is that circulation from, but not just a corridor, but it's just areas to move around and to move from one to the other, and the circulation is clear. And I'm struck by your separation of their circulation, their circulation, their circulation. So I think I would look at the project and would say, I'm just drawing the circulation or the public right now, the areas that are open to the public. And then there are some closed volumes in there. And then I probably would also dedicate the ground level to that market and say, well, a market also needs storage, they need delivery, they need like not such nice, restaurant areas, which is great. A central market in downtown, it's kind of nasty when you go there at 5 a.m. and they deliver stuff and people start shopping. It's great, but it's not all pretty and it's not all, designed architecture. It's functional, but that being functional makes it so great and makes it also believable. I mean, it is believable, it exists. So I think you're a little bit too ornamental with your program and with the architecture. And that theater is that a theater up here?
Yeah, it's an auditorium.
Yeah, I mean, why? Why everyone has to have an auditorium? Is that
Yeah.
why?
Yeah, we had to have
Well, then I would put it on an upper level. I
Yeah,
would really be serious about my ground level and saying, and then you draw thousands of people in it. If you really want all of these people, you better provide something where they would have a need to go. So it's a little bit of a decorative approach to.
I think it's fair. I mean, I guess I think that's fair. I mean, I appreciate the impulse to do that. For me, the thing that like seems not a tragic flaw, but you have this sort of like half courtyard where you have a certain kind of activity, and then you have your U-shaped building, and then on the other side of the U-shape, you have more of the same thing. And
Yeah.
so I feel like there's a decision about hierarchy. And so I think, like,
Mhm.
speaking to this last comment, like I would have put everything on that central courtyard, make sure it's surrounded by the right kind of things. And then outside of the building, it might be still open, but lesser. I think it's a difficult to do at this stage, but like if you look
Mhm.
at your red dots, your people,
Yeah.
they're uniformly distributed, which is
Mhm.
like not how people occupy space. Like some of these things
Mhm.
would be bigger attractions than others. And so I think you're on the right track. I mean, I think
Mhm.
that your impulses are really clear. I think you want a scaffold framework that facilitates this use. And then
Mhm.
I think the question is, well, how do you, the almost nothingness doesn't mean nothingness. It's actually highly orchestrated. So Crown Hall has like everything's put in the basement that's like ungainly. So the auditorium is specifically in the basement because I would break up the view. So like you would want visual continuity on that ground level or the marketplace. And so I think there's the sort of qualifications that might come in. But I think as a kind of ideal or as a kind of like statement about how you think this building would work, I think it's very clear. Like your aspirations are very clear in this, which I appreciate.
Thank you.
We have never talked in the projects about another aspect of this is the time of use. Like when you look at OMA or Yokohama Urban Ring, is that it? The overlay of functions, the 24-hour cycle on a site where to get maximum use out of a very precious site, it's not just one action, one program that happens there. It's like a parking lot at a certain time of the day, and then it becomes a market, and then it becomes, I don't know, something else. So that's also another way to look at a project like this, that you can organize the use and the functions by its time of use, and also introduce nighttime occupation. And it gets really complex, but also interesting. And you also realize that you might be able to operate with a smaller footprint or smaller size because of this overlap.
Yep.
Great. Ignacio, you want to turn on your camera?
Yeah.
This is so impersonal.
Oh.
Well, I think it's a great set of comments, and you know, and I really, really appreciate John and Irena, both of you, the comments about the treatment of the site, because as Ignacio knows, you know, the building was there, like pretty much designed at midterm.
Yeah.
But it made no sense without the sort of activation of that paseo through there. So I really appreciate that y'all picked up on that. And I think, Ignacio, you can see how big of an impact that had on the project. And the sort of 90 or the 180-degree rotation completely changed the personality of it and made it totally like, brought it totally where it needed to go. So thanks for your hard work this semester. I won't say it was easy, but it was fun.
It was fun. It was fun.
Yeah. All right, great. Let's see. Chen Hao. You're there, Chen?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Can you see the full screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So hi, I'm Chen Hao, and my design is the model museum, and the site is the downtown area of Los Angeles, and my teammate and I designed a community as a L-shaped structure in order to keep the residents away from the noises from the highway and the railway. And the place I choose for the museum is in the plaza in the southern part of the community. Yeah, it's here. And I replaced the square building to be a model museum. So I started my design as a block and divided into 3 parts. The right and the left parts are the main functional area of the building, and the middle part is the circulation area. And then I made these 3 parts in different areas in order to fulfill the needs of the function. And then I put them into different places, not just as a simple block. And finally, I put the middle part just for 1 floor height, and to connect the other 2 main parts on the second, third floor with bridges. And so here's the axon. And here's the main site plan of my building. Here's the first floor, and in the first floor, in the left main part, I have the core exhibition area and a multi-purpose area. And in the right building, I have a shop, a core, and a cafe. In the second floor, I have the main exhibition area in the second floor of the left building, and the maker room, the lab, and the ateliers are concentrated in the right building. Here's the third floor. In the third floor, I have the 2 libraries for adults and children in the left part, and working spaces, the meeting room, the conference room are concentrated in the right part. Here's my section. So because the third floor of the left part are the libraries, so I designed a skylight system to give them a better light condition. And here's the section for the right part. So in this part, just fulfill the needs for the working first functions. And here's the section in the middle part of the connection. So the connection of these 2 buildings in the first floor is connected by the middle part. It's the indoor part. And in the second floor and the third floor, it's connected by the roof of the first floor and the 2 bridges in the third floor. Here's a section of the front of the building. Yeah, here's another one. So, and here's the perspective of my buildings. And here's the inside of the third floor of the libraries. This is a library for children, and here's a library for the adults. And here's my presence. So I learned the skylight system from here. Yeah, okay, that's it.
So when you say model museum, what do you mean by model museum?
That's a personal interest of that. Yeah.
No, I mean, are you talking about architectural models, or what are you? I don't know what you mean. What's a model museum?
Actually, my first thought, I just want to make the models by like ships, the planes, and some animation models, something like that. Yeah. And yeah, but I'm also like to check some precedent from like in Shanghai. There's some building model, architectural model museum like that. So I'm also like learn from it. I just want to make the museum just concentrates many kinds of models here.
Do you show that anywhere? Do we see the model museum?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like in the first design, think about like to use the present like the Bandai company and something else for just present, but just and yeah, that is just like kind of the museum function, just shows like that. Yeah, and
maybe go to an image that's more indicative of the building, like a plan or an axon or something. I think I don't know if the libraries are your, yeah.
I mean, there's a story by Italo Calvino, Invisible Cities, which describes a whole series of cities which ultimately turn out to be Venice, Italy. And there's one about the museum. I forgot what he calls it, but it's about all the things that a city could have been, these failed projects and failed visions, and they are encapsulated, or they are in a place where you can look at these ideas and missed opportunities. So I thought maybe that's what you're referring to, that is an exhibit for LA and all these projects that had been done on it. And it's almost like a civic museum that is very specific about what's in it. But I wasn't sure that's why I asked. It could go in many different ways. And it is a film city. There are lots of movies being made in LA. So bits and pieces of movie sets, I have no idea. So I think that would be a bit more specific about. And then you said animation. That means to me, it's maybe not so much of an object that's exhibited. It's more of a projection of things and audiovisual. I don't know.
That's just a personal interest like that. Just in my first thought about. Yeah.
Can you show it in the site plan? I'm trying to orient myself. I find the project difficult to understand in some ways. I think it starts off with a very clear diagrammatic logic. And then when it gets to here, I'm just not sure. I think it works. It's basically a fat bar and a skinny bar connected with a vestibule. But I'm just not sure how to understand. I'm not sure what's motivating the project. I think the sawtooth roof line from the precedent, I think, is a really good choice. But I'm not sure where the hierarchy is, at least for you. Like you've mentioned this model museum, which we've talked about, but we don't really see that anywhere. That would have been a good opportunity. I would have built that rendering as opposed to the library rendering, because if that's your personal interest, I find it hard to know where to look in this building. It's developed, but not. I don't know what's motivating it. What's the most important part of the building for us to understand, do you think?
Just in my personal thinking about, like when I almost finish it and when I do the rendering things, I put my I just focusing on the skylight system. So I just rendering the top floor to show the skylight system, to show that, because I think that is the interesting part of my building. Yeah, so yeah, maybe I just forget my main purpose.
Like
it's somehow like that. You mentioned that, so yeah, that's something I just have forgot to focusing on. Yeah,
I think it's problematic if you always just think about what interests you. So there's also a responsibility to a program, to a client, to a city, to a place. And it's not all based, maybe the interest comes when you engage in it. So it's not always, because you're just at the beginning of the architecture education. So to just operate from what interests you is a little bit problematic for me, because then you never gain anything new, because you already know what interests you, right? So I don't know how you learn. But another thing, looking at this plan right now, it's very lost somehow in its large site. And so I don't know how we sometimes ask students, if you take that building away, would you notice that there's something missing? So would you? I don't think so. So there's not really, there are alignments that could be made. There are links, connections. There's a building next to it here. There is a street that opens up. So I guess you respond with this here to that street. I'm not sure. The entry could have been from here, so that it's between an existing building and the street. So there's a visibility of an entry, but no, we have to slip over to here and then go in. So there are just some moves that I don't understand, or that are made unnecessarily. I could have stronger connections to what's there already. So always trying to use something what is there, to extend on it, to tie your project to it, I think is a good move. And the first thing is that you have to draw what's there. So you drew the building on the right, but you didn't say anything above what's up there, right?
Because like when I do this, just I just put the line of the building like here. It's in the same line here and the same line in here to just keep it to like the same level. So and because the first design, the initial design of my building is a block, just as the replacement and rescale of the first block I did in my actually that is the first kind of structure idea design before this. So I just change the things like from this square, and because the initial design here is also a square, so yeah, that's what I'm thinking about, like the connection and ties to the whole community system. And yeah, and also I rescaled it because the initial things is, I think, is too big to fulfill the rules, the areas it limited like that. Yeah, so
unfortunately, I think we need to move on, but if there's like one last comment, maybe.
I think there's a dilemma in the master plan, moving to a building which is much smaller than an element in the master plan. But I think you could also just legitimately say it's even part of a block building. And it's like what you do in urban design, that you say this is like for a part of the block, which is the museum. And then the other part of that block will be another competition, and later on will be another function in there, another use. And I prescribe heights and widths, the envelope, so the footprint, but I'm not designing everything. That would get you out of the dilemma to suddenly shrink something to a very small size and then lose the master plan.
Great. And over winter break, really get that model, the model museum view for your portfolio, because that sounds really compelling and sounds like what you want to do. So you should do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joaquin. You here, Joaquin?
Yeah, here. Wait. Okay, so hi, my name is Joaquin Rivas, and I designed an integration space. Here are the contest. I will be talking about the urban scale, intermediate scale, precedent, architectural scale, diagrams, development of proposal, and the visualization of proposal. So first of all, I started with developing what's going to be the circulation of the whole site, which is no motor vehicles, which is more than motor circulation. Later on, I used figure ground to do what I wanted to do, which is connect the plaza, which is in the left side, to the park as a clear connection. So that's what I wanted to have as a concept, to have a clear connection between the plaza and the park, which are the two main areas of my whole site. Okay, so starting off with architectural scale, it's structural grid, and then I
wanted, as I said before, to have this clear connection between the plaza and the park. I created these voids to help people pass through by easily. And there's a course also. There's the ground floor circulation. So the circulation inside the building is indirect and dispersed. It's designed to promote collaboration and interaction, which is large open horizontal floor plates. And here I have the program, which is interaction, the bathroom and course. Here, education, bathroom course. For second floor circulation. And the second floor program, integration space, education. The third floor circulation. Okay, so here's my ground floor. So for these three-story courtyards bring natural light deep into the floor plates, creating a spacious and early light air filter interior, which make the users can engage with the physically and nature. So that's what these voids create as well, and also the integration between the plaza and the park in itself.
Which void, when you say these voids, which voids are you talking about?
These two courtyards.
Okay.
The main courtyards from the building. I don't know what's not going down. Wait. Oh, wait. Okay, this is the second floor. No. I don't know why it's not going to the second floor. Okay, there's the second floor, and that's also I wanted to for the second floor to have just one courtyard as open and the other one as a closed courtyard. So I created this bridge which connects the two type of buildings, because it's divided like in two parts, which the right part, if you see it from above, it's more mainly focused in education and media tech and stuff, and then it creates a passage to the left side of the building, which is more of interaction and more of integration, where everyone goes into the courtyard and coincide with each other. There's the third floor, which is a double height on the educational space, which is in the right, and on the integration space on the left, it creates more like another courtyard above.
Okay, Joaquin, you guys speed it up. You're running out of time.
So here's one section. Here's my perspectives.
So what do you mean by integration space? What is that?
What I mean with integration space is how these.
I mean, what happens there?
Yeah. Yeah. In the courtyards, I wanted them to have. I created like these little things to make them unite with them. So like going down there and like just being able to to coincide with each other like more easily.
I mean, it seems to me that maybe it's the difference between public and private. Is that what you're after?
Yeah,
That,
that's
that,
basically
or is it overlap of functions? I'm not quite sure what you mean by integration
like,
space.
yeah, it's
Sometimes
where,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, like more like open and private, like it's more like open and
When you have an abundance of circulation in the building, and so it's like I don't really know exactly what's happening there. Again, it's like a train station, but there are no trains arriving. So the masses of people that are supposed to go through this building and meet each other, I don't know where they come from and where they go to. So it's a little bit of a mystery to me. Who uses the building and how is it being used? And is there a clarity in circulation? As you know, or sometimes you have circulation space, but it's clear this is where you really walk and go from A to B. And then there is additional lounge space, or it's off to the side. It's not always the same. So there can be differences can be made between primary circulation and secondary circulation. I don't know, or a quick way to go up and down with the fire stairs. And there might be a more prominent, bigger stair to signal this is the public space, this is the public area of this building. So it's a bit confused. And then your bathrooms open up to the big area, open circulation area, instead of being maybe tucked away a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think the promise of this building, I mean, is that it inverts the typical relationship between net to gross square footages. So what typically would be the programmatic part you protect with a sort of 15% add-on for circulation, you've inverted. So it's like 80% circulation and 20% dedicated program.
Yeah.
I think that's intriguing. I think for me, the plans are more convincing than the perspectives, but the perspectives show the beginning of a thinking through of like occupying these zones so they can't just be understood as circulation. Like there have to be a different kind of thing. This has to be a building where most of the activity is happening in the open. And I just think there's more stuff associated with it. There's just many more tables and couches or whatever. Like it's a kind of like radical reoccupation of the space. I think the renderings go to Irena's comment about like the train stationness. It's beautiful, but it's like stark and marble and empty. Whereas I think like somehow now you go to the enclosed space as a kind of refuge from this very open thing. I mean, I like the fact that you have the two courtyards work differently. I think I really appreciate the moves that it makes. I just think to make this work, that gray area would just be full of stuff. Like it would be occupied in a way, not just by tasteful couches, but like a wholly different, like the whole thing's a reading room. That's a sort of like sinuous reading room that's full of tables and chairs. And I don't know, it would be a recalibration of the building, but that recalibration would also involve its furnishings and its layout of those furnishings potentially. I mean, just thinking of something like the Seattle Public Library on those main levels, which are just like big open spaces, but they're full of tables and chairs and they're occupied, and the actual area of enclosed rooms are quite small on some of those floors.
So Rex has a great competition. I forgot, it's a exhibit building. I forgot which one it is, but it has this floor plan where you have the middle, which is packed with the galleries and whatever museum program. And then you have this big perimeter. It's somewhere in Norway or Finland. And this is all lounges. So this program on the inside, which needs darkness because it has art in it and exhibits, now participates in these, there are millions of like foyers and all the bathroom stuff is all within that. So that is populated constantly because people have to, this is the circulation. So people have to go out and around, and then there's maybe a cafe here and there's something else here to activate it, diffuse out into the city. It's a fantastic floor plan. It's really great. And it's very efficient in terms of its floor plate because it it overlaps functions, but everything is so this is the cell space and the open space, and it's very clear. And so look at that project. Unfortunately, I cannot remember its name.
That's interesting.
But on their website.
Is it the Munch Museum or Munch Museum?
Maybe it is that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great.
Thank you.
Any last comment?
No, I mean, it has a very, as John said, the renderings, the facade, it's convincing. It works, it looks good, but it's just so non-committal in a way. It's like a formula, and then don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Joaquin. Cassie, you here? Hi.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm Cassie, and my project is called Street Extension, and is a hub for the street culture community of Los Angeles. Los Angeles, just like Las Vegas, is primarily experienced through the lens of the car. The site itself is mostly framed by roads and car infrastructure. Currently, it's mostly parking lots. So with this in mind, my partner and I attempted to solve the problem of wanting to make a walkable master plan in a city dominated by car culture. We proposed the site be centered around adaptable parking garages that could be converted to housing in the future. As a result of consolidating the parking, the rest of the site became more pedestrian scale and pedestrian focused. We also proposed the streets be adaptable as well. Since LA is so car-centric, it's realistic that most of the streets are accessible by car, but we designed them to be phased into green streets in the future when the cars are less necessary. So the first type of street acts as the primary circulation to the site. There are 2 north-south streets and 2 east-west streets that are directly connected to other roads outside the proposal. These roads will almost always be for cars. And then the next type of street is an adaptive street, which today is used mainly for cars, but in the future can be adapted to be more pedestrian focused. These streets don't necessarily connect to outside streets, but rather branch off from the main streets on the site. And then the third type of street is a one-way street, which is narrower and will be the first to be adapted into pedestrian-only streets. They're more private and don't connect all the way to the site. So the rest of the site formed around the streets, including the adaptable parking garages pictured in orange, which are scattered throughout. Another big part of the master plan was a 50 by 50 grid imposed over the entire site to give everything structure and order. Zooming out for a second, here's an axon of the master plan showing the site in context in its relation to nearby streets, the river, highways, and the surrounding buildings. This is the site of the Catalyst building, which you can see here in the red dotted in plan, and here in the intermediate scale. It's strategically located on the intersection of 3 roads in the plaza. Since the master plan is centered around streets and their adaptability, this Catalyst building lends itself to being a hub for street culture and street art, which is the way the people of LA currently adapt the streets to make them their own. The building will be a museum of street art with mostly open air public galleries. It will also have an education or outreach center to educate at-risk youth about street art and urban beautification. The main concept that drove the building is an open ground floor that mimics the surrounding context. This matches the strategy in the master plan and the surrounding buildings of permeability and allows for easy and free circulation. People can access the building from almost anywhere on the street. However, there are 4 main entrances to the plaza, which are delineated by crosswalks and murals on the ground, which usher visitors into the plaza. The curved walls of the plaza double as murals and as channels to direct visitors toward important areas on the site, such as the main stair, which I'll get to later. The building has an open threshold in the ground floor mass that bridges the street and the plaza behind the building. It also links the nearby plazas. Sectionally, the building mimics the surrounding context, especially at ground floor level. However, the difference is that the 3rd floor is also open and not just a solid mass. The open 1st and 3rd floors mean the building alternates between mass and void. The void floors are open public space, while the mass floors are private, quiet spaces for learning and working. To take my concept of blurring the boundaries between the street and architecture further, I wanted to bring the street into my building. I did this by extending the street upwards through a public outdoor stair that connects to the third floor. The third floor then becomes an elevated street with public programs such as mural spaces for street art. So to create the massing, I took the plot of the site first, imposed a series of grids, including the 50 by 50 site-wide grid from the master plan. This provided the location for the vertical course. I then added in the massing and a stair that began from the street, which split the massing into two and created an elevated street on the third floor, which is publicly accessible. I also wanted to activate the roof space as public space. To do this, I created a stair that stemmed from the third floor on the opposite side of the building. The smaller stair is half the size of the larger stair and is enclosed as opposed to being open. The north stair appears as a solid mass jutting out of the building. The mass also juts out of the mesh facade, which encloses the entire building and provides for filtered light throughout. Here's the south side of the building and the public stair. The public stair carves out of the building mass above, which juxtaposes the north enclosed stair, which is massing jutting out of a void. This stair is open and allows for southern sun exposure. A permeable mesh lightly encloses the stair and facade of the building. Here's a slightly more detailed isometric of the building inserted in the surrounding context and people interacting with the space to get a sense more for its scale in relation to other buildings. So to create the column structure of the building, a 50 by 50 grid that went over the site was used in addition to 3 smaller grids at different intervals. At ground floor level in the plan, there is a cafe, seating, and open plaza space. The whole ground floor is an extension of the streets and is public, which is opposed to the second floor, which contains more private exhibition space and an auditorium. The third floor is open and contains outdoor workspaces and walls for murals. A different language exists for the outdoor spaces as opposed to the indoor ones. The walls in the exterior spaces are curved, which is more playful and allows for a break in the rigid orthogonal grid system of the indoor spaces. The fourth floor is heavily gridded and contains a library and administrative spaces. These are more quiet and private spaces. In the fifth floor, the roof is a green roof and uses filtered gray water from the building. The form breaks out of the rigid square grid, just as the other outdoor spaces do. Above the stairs, an indoor space that slopes upward with the stair below. This bridges the galleries on the second floor to the library on the fourth floor. The indoor space contains public artists' workspaces and ateliers. This is a cross-section through the center of the building. Sectionally, all the spaces interact with each other, including the auditorium, which slopes upward with the adjacent outdoor stair. The section perspective gives a better idea of how the spaces are interacting spatially and kind of the slight variations between some of them. The programs all interact with each other and alternate between more private or public, depending on if the floor is mass or void. The cores contain all the serving space and the rest of the building is served space. So the circulation of the building consists mainly in 2 parts. There are public stairs flanking the exteriors of the building, which allow for a slower circulation, and then the vertical cores, which are nestled in the middle of the building and allow for a private, faster circulation. The ground floor is the most permeable space, which is seen here. And then the main circulation on the second floor is the public stair, which connects to the auditorium and through it the galleries. The third floor connects the public stair on the south to the enclosed stair on the north side. And then the enclosed stair connects to the library. The ateliers, which are located above the open public stair, also include indoor circulation from the second to fourth floor. The fifth floor is where the enclosed stair landing is. And once again, the cores also include circulation and connect to every floor. So the model here highlights the massing, circulation, and structure in the building. The main mass of the building is wood, while the main circulation elements, the 2 stairs, are 3D printed in white to match the white base and highlight their connection to the extensions of the street below. The model highlights the stark differences between mass and void in this project, and the columns show the thin structure of the building between the 2 masses that accentuates the open and closed floors. So here's just an enlarged photo of the model. So this view shows the building in an urban context from one of the adjacent streets and highlights the open ground floor underneath the building as an extension of the street, with mass jutting out of the side, as well as how it mirrors the surrounding
Did we lose
building.
you?
Oh, can you not hear me anymore?
We can hear you. We might have lost Arena, seems like.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
I'm almost done. Should I
Okay.
keep going?
Yeah, just keep going.
Okay. So this view is the last perspective, but kind of photoshopped into the learning from Las Vegas perspective as kind of like a highlight back.
As they
And
drive
here's
on
an
the sidewalk.
Yeah. Here's an elevation of the south side stair with the plaza and kind of in Nice goes to California style to kind of get the vibe. Yeah, and Hockney.
Cool.
Yep. And here's a perspective of the plaza. Here's a perspective of the stair, kind of showing the mesh and how it shields the light on the southern side. And then here's one last perspective of the third floor, kind of a flattened perspective, just to show like the curved walls, how they're different from kind of the materiality of the rest of the building. Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Thanks, Cassie. I think we lost Arena, but hopefully she'll be back.
Okay.
She can, yeah, usually if you rejoin. I'll go ahead and start. I really like the project. I think there's lots to commend it, like a genuine appreciation. I think one of the things that is smart about the project happens right at the beginning, that you keep your master plan. Like basically, if you look at your master plan, it's kind of an interesting scheme of just like these long, thin buildings that change orientation and create a kind of pattern across the site. I think you pick one of them and develop it, as opposed to like rethinking the master plan. I think the master plan is actually nice. But I think there's just a discipline to like that received shape, and then you start your work from there, as opposed to restarting. Like I think there's just the long skinny building gives you a kind of discipline, and I think you then apply your energy to figuring out, well, how can I circulate through that interestingly? How can I have different levels do different things? Your design energy goes into your building as opposed to rethinking its urban placement, which I think is really good. I think there's, I mean, it's as evidence in the final series of collages and images. There's an art historical awareness about what you're doing, or I would say a historical awareness about like what you're trying to deploy within it, which I also appreciate and think is really smart. The one thing I think the model's very nice, and I think I totally support Omar's hope for you guys to like rebuild model building culture after COVID. It's super important. And I appreciate you guys. I've never heard anybody tell me what the model's made of before. It's kind of a fantastic new development. I wish the building, and this is not a theoretical concept. This is not even a teaching concept. This is just like my preference. I wish the building had more color in it. Like, I think it would be such an interesting, weird building to see that big staircase on the side. Like its overall massing is pretty straightforward. It's a long, thin building, but I think the introduction of that exterior stair to it, like would make it a really striking building. And I just wish it weren't rendered in taupe. It doesn't mean it has to be super brightly colored, but I feel like it doesn't have, it feels me more like a background building than I think what it would be like to be in it in a way. And so I wish there was just some more contrast in it.
Cassie, where's the view? Where's the view of the mural?
Yeah, I actually had it for mid review and I took it out. But it was colored like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm just vamping. I'm asking her to change the colors because I like more colors than she does. That's not a very teacherly comment.
I'm sorry, I was absent for like the last maybe minute of your presentation. I was disconnected. There are all these warnings about storms hitting New Orleans. So the internet went out here. So I'm just coming back. So I'm sorry. It's not that I was not saying anything. I was just not able to get back on. But I'm very impressed with your project, Cassie, and also it's finally somebody addressing the car culture, the street types, and talking about the streets. Also thinking ahead that we won't always rely on the cars. Hopefully, there will be some other ways of moving around the city, and so some streets might not be streets anymore, and they could be given over to some other uses. To the introduction of kind of the super grid, the super block, and connecting things. I think this was all good and all.
Oh shit!
Oh no, we were getting to the
Man,
good
you
part.
guys are like, I hope everybody stays okay today. It sounds like this storm thing's a real. We have a nice cold Midwestern day here in Ann Arbor. I don't have anything, but I hope everybody stays okay. It sounds.
I don't think I'm gonna make it back. It seems like.
It doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, Arena, you're there.
I was kicked out again. I'm so sorry.
No.
Wendy's house is in a wind zone somehow. Wendy and I, we are both, talking to each other, saying, "Are you on? Are you on?" No, we're not on. So sorry. So it's in the other review. It's the same thing. Wendy's also off. So where was I? I don't know.
I think you
Oh, the
Agriculture.
we're
up
about to
to
get to the good part.
the public level and then actually really making a way for somebody to go up to the public level with a really grand gesture and then distinguishing between real public and then kind of public, making it narrower, enclosing the one, opening the other one. I mean, they're all great moves.
Yeah.
So I'm just super impressed. And I only hope I get you next semester. So it's
You
great.
can't say that.
I'm sorry. I'm great. It's great to see models and to see. I hope they didn't come at the end. I hope they were kind of process models also. So I have to really pick my brain right now to say something not negative, but something that could be done better. I mean, these wiggly walls, they're a little bit right now. They're placeholders for something. Which is fine. It's just a different system that you're expressing. And if it is wiggly walls or if it's something else that is part of how a project develops. But yeah.
I mean, part of that for me, I mean, as I saw you developing it, I think we channel these projects through our own lens. I was seeing like a mid-career architectonica, which is a kind of like, you know, they're the ones that are in Miami Vice. They're sort of bold colors with these moves.
The good
Those wiggle lines are
architectonica.
sort of that. What's that, Omar?
The good architectonica.
Yeah, I think there is a good architectonica, and it's a kind of like mid-early. And I think I can't think like Irina, I can't think of complaints because I really like it. I can think of distinctions. And so in the top right axon, that axon makes it look like it's just a frame structure that you see and it's all open and there's a stair outside of it. I far prefer what I see in the model, where there's like a level that feels really open versus a level that feels really closed, and the stair gets rendered as really enclosed, and it has, and I think also in that view next to it, you get more of that sense of it, that the levels are really distinct, they're sort of held together. There's almost a constructivist quality to the way these slabs come together, which is part of the what I liked about Architectonica is they took that modernist diagram and then made it day glow. Like they basically added a kind of vibrancy. So that's where I see those squiggles as a kind of like related to that. Also the sort of googie architecture of the 50s in LA. I think there's part of that in there as well. And so what I like, but again, Irina, the thing I was sort of enforcing is my biggest appreciation of the project is she accepted her own urban diagram, which is just this line. And so how do I occupy this line? And then all the work goes into that as opposed to rethinking it, which I think is just like, if we have a zero-sum hours of amount of design effort, go ahead and take what you gave yourself from the urban plan and develop that, because it's a kind of like arbitrary constraint and working through it. And I think, it benefits from that.
And I think also the word, because that was the title of the studio, the Urban Catalyst, wasn't that it, Omar?
Yeah.
So this building really, I would say, yeah, this is a catalyst. It's defined, but it's open enough to allow, something this year, but something else in 5 years. So it's not a fixed, we built this and this is it. And if you want to do something else in this building, you can't. And this one has more of this air of whoever lives around there, whoever uses it is kind of bending it or is making it into something, spurring something. I don't know. Maybe it's because I just like it.
Not to take anything away from Cassie's achievement, which I think is considerable, and Irina, I hope you get her for next semester too. That'll be nice.
I couldn't say that. That was pointed out to me.
The cat's out of the bag, and it's on YouTube, so you might get a call from HR soon enough. But I think one of the things, I think we saw a lot of great buildings today. Like I think this is close to concluding comments. I'm jealous. You guys are very, very well executed schemes. You need circulation. But that's for your instructors to enforce, but like so well presented, so smart, nicely drawn, like really truly impressive. As I struggle to teach my own students what a plan is, you guys are like executing very nicely. I think one thing in particular about this final scheme that it benefits from is that it like kept its own urban diagram, and then in its urban diagram, it occupied a part of that diagram that's relatively dense. And so if you look at that upper left corner or the middle site plan, there's buildings around it. So you don't have to like, you don't have your building, you don't have like acres of open space that you have to then pavilionize, which is just hard. It's hard to like become, that's then you putting on your third disciplinary hat, urban designer, architect, now site planner / landscape architect. It's too much. And so I think what's nice about this final scheme is like, we can see other buildings around it. They're typologically similar. They provide a kind of density. You're responsible for like a little plaza next to it, but you're not like, you don't render these buildings as object buildings. So there's fabric around it. And I think that just helps. It helps it to make sense. I think so many of these buildings would have been better received if they were in denser parts of their own urban plans. So they could like be formed by their urban fabrics as opposed to just like in parks.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to, unless Irene had something.
Yeah, I remember teaching that urban studio for the first time a few years ago. It was a site in Toronto, Canada. And there was the final review, and a student was presenting, and she had a museum, and it had this weird cut-off corner where you would expect just a regular, like, you know, the building complete in its form. And then she was arguing, she was saying, oh, well, my master plan had this angle, and that's why this museum has this angle. And Iñaki was on the review, and Iñaki said, well, change your master plan. You're the meister. You made the master plan. Now you go back, because now you know what that museum needs. You go back and you change your master plan. So that is possible there. And it was a revelation that you constantly adjust back and forth, but you really try to help your project, you help your building at the end. And if the master plan doesn't work, then you fill it, or you know, not just that moment, but so you're not creating another problem for you by having nothing around it or having a weird angle that somehow the building can't really fulfill. So that I thought was really a good example of this idea for that studio also, that you learn that the master plan and the building they go together. I mean, you're in that very rare position that you have control as a student, that you have control over both. Normally there's a master plan that somebody else did, and you're given a site there, and you can't change the master plan anymore. You have to live with it, and you have to do your building accordingly. But you have this opportunity in the studio to really kind of balance and to go back and forth between both, which I think is nerve-wracking because it never ends, but it's also exciting.
Yeah, that's great. Those were basically the closing comments, but maybe Cass, if you want to unshare, that y'all can leave everyone with a couple more things. But Cassie, thanks so much. I mean, it's such a pleasure working with you all semester, and she's also my TA for another class, and I think that's where the art history stuff really comes in really nicely. And so it's really nice to, just to see a really comprehensive project. You work so hard day in, day out, so consistent, every day something new, and that's why, like, I hope people can take something away from that. That's why it's so well developed. That's why it got to where it got, because every day, you're just pushing it. So thank you.
Thank you so
I
much.
also wanted to say one thing. They're really good drawings that I saw throughout. So congratulations to the instructors and the students, of course. Sorry, but no, it was good.
More to the students.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks.
Okay.
For
Well,
the
thank you for
invitation.
inviting me. Always good to see you, Omar, and see you again, Irina. And good luck
Yeah,
to all
thanks.
the students. Weather the storm and have a nice break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck
Okay,
with the
bye,
storm,
John.
everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
If y'all want to jump to another room, feel free.
Who, us?
Yeah, if you want. I think the
No.
other rooms are still open. But
No,
thanks,
I
John.
don't want to do that.
Yeah, I know. See you, John.
I've had my nice moment. Bye.
Yeah.
Right. So are we meeting somewhere, all the reviewers, or this is it?
I think this is it, but Irena, feel free, and students definitely feel free to jump to, I think the other ones are still going. So Irena, if you want to jump
Okay.
in, feel free. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, students, nice to meet you.
You'll see them next semester.
Yeah,
I hope you're
bye.
excited. I hope you're excited. They're a good group.
Okay, bye. Bye, Omar. Have a good break. I will see you. I know.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.